Welcome to episode 8 of the Go Ivy or Go Free podcast. I am here with Hannah Maruyama, who is the co-founder of Degree Free, which helps coach students into starting their careers without going to college. So, the podcast is Go Ivy or Go Free. I wanted to, explore the Go Ivy part first, and now we're going to the Go Free part and we're going to the extreme, right? So, pretty cool. So, Hannah, thank you so much for coming out here and having this conversation with me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this ever since we connected on social media. And so this is really exciting for me to be here.
Yeah, I know. And this is gonna be a bit of a shock, I think, to a lot of the parents that I work with, right? Because why would the guy who helps kids get into Ivies bring on someone who doesn't think you should go to college, right? And here's the funny thing though, in most cases, I'm 100% on board with that. I at this point, part of the reason why this sort of barbell strategy, I think, to my mind has emerged is that college is a really bad proposition at this point for a very large chunk of people. And I don't tell everybody to go to college. In fact, I tell most people that they need to, first figure out what they're doing. And there's a much more complicated strategy. But I want to hear a little bit about your background. First off, what exactly is Degree Free, promoting? What's your mission with this? And then, tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
So the mission of Degree Free is to help young adults start their careers in the most logical way possible. Most often, for most people, that is not going to be college right off the bat. A lot of that is just because young adults who are deciding whether or not they're going to go to college at 17 or 18 have not found the clearest reason to go. Not only have they not found the clearest reason to go, but a lot of times they don't have a really good grasp on the ROI. And I'm not necessarily just talking about the money either. I'm also talking about the time and the energy during the freest, most healthy years of their life. And that's something that I think that time is being spent without parents and often without their kids comprehending what they're losing before it's already gone.
Yeah, there's no consideration of opportunity cost at all.
None.
Right? Because you could be using that time for a million different things, or at least not incurring expenses.
Right.
Like, this is the funny thing. I was like, if you start a small business, one of the first pieces of advice that you get is don't take on debt. Right. And they tell you don't take on debt, not because, you're not smart and because you couldn't figure it out, but because the odds that whatever you would use that money, to invest in would beat the interest rate is pretty freaking low, right? So, being a little more conservative with your approach there is useful. I mean, okay, so talk to me about, I guess, maybe separating the cases out, right? So, what's an example of someone who you think, is getting a degree and maybe didn't think this through? Like, what's the case where it doesn't make any sense? What's a case where maybe it might make sense?
Well, I think that unfortunately, people are probably not going to like the answer to that question. I think most kids should not be in college. And that's because, and actually, I'll illustrate this with a story. I remember I was actually talking to somebody who runs basically a college prep private micro school in Miami, actually. And I got on the phone with this guy. Someone said, "Hey, you guys got to talk. You guys got to meet." And he gets on the phone with me and he tells me so proudly that 95% of the kids in his program are going to college. And I was like, that is a travesty. That's way too high.
Right.
It's statistically impossible that everybody that's coming through your program needs to be there, and that it's the best use of their time.
And also, which college, right? Because
Right.
that's the part that gets me when they come out with those stats. They're like, okay, 95% of our kids graduate and go to college. And it's like, well, have you guys noticed that a lot of these colleges, especially at the lower end, have acceptance rates of 100%?
Yes.
So if we were in the 70s or something and you said, 100% of the kids are going to college, right? Well, that used to be an elite stat, right, in the 70s, right? Because back then it was okay, the colleges were mostly, you had your Harvards, your Yales, all the rest of those, and maybe some pretty selective at the time state schools that were really, indicative of somebody who is really high IQ, right? And so you going to college, right, meant something really significant about you, and that can't be the case if they're taking everybody.
Well, it's not only that too, but if you think about from an objective standpoint, there's a book called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. It's great book, and a lot of it is it's a business book,
right.
And it's about if you're measuring the wrong things, you're going to get the wrong outcomes.
Yep.
Now, what are we measuring success, what's our success metric, our North Star metric for K through 12 education, private, public, charter
Yep.
in the United States, and homeschoolers too, actually fall victim to this a lot. What is the North Star metric? You know what it is.
Going to college.
Going to college is college acceptance. But what does college acceptance tell you about someone?
I mean, it used to tell you a lot.
Well, now, but all it does now is it tells you that they're going to take on debt, because most people do. It's a guarantee of absolutely nothing. It's not a guarantee of employment. It's not a guarantee of positive ROI. It's not a guarantee of time well spent. It's not a guarantee of a good life outcome, of marriage, of business, of even high income at this point. So we're measuring the wrong thing. And a lot of that from a DOE policy level is because that's the easiest thing to measure, right? It's, we can just measure which kids go on to college. And so K through 12, the entire goal of K through 12 is college admission. That's it.
Can I push back on that for just 1 second?
Yeah,
Because I think holding them to the standard of a guarantee is probably going a bit too far.
Ooh, for you think holding colleges to the guarantee of employment is too far?
100%. Because that's not why people will do it. And even a lot of these schools, they do it for an increased probability, right? A guarantee is not the same thing, right? And so even a certification, I think what and I'm saying this just because I think it's easy for us to fall into like a little bit of imprecise language when talking about this, because like I'm with you on that too, because the colleges market themselves as a guarantee.
They do.
And it's not. And so I see why you're saying that. And like I see why they're saying that too, and they're being dishonest, frankly, and they should be called out for that. But at least on the consumer end, right? Like if I'm going to decide to send my kid to a college like that, it's because I want them to have better chances of succeeding in life. Like it's not the college's fault that there will be some percentage of people that won't succeed despite getting a good education, if they're even giving a good education, right?
Well, so there's a multiple points here that I'd like to dig into, because I think you and I are definitely going to differ a little bit, and I would love to get your input on this. So one thing is that there's Pew research that was done 2 years ago that shows that 72% of parents, the reason that they send there's one primary reason they send their kids to college, and it's because they think it's going to get them a good job. 100%. So that is the primary driver. I think that for your demographic, which is people who are trying to send their kids to Ivies, I think that that's correct for you. However, most people are not trying to send their kids to Ivies. Most people are trying to send their kids to college because they believe it's going to get them good employment, and it's not going to do that. So that's one thing that I think really is a problem. Like and a lot of that's just because the parents themselves were taught that that's the only way to
100%.
get employment.
Yeah.
So the colleges also, I think that at the price point, which is 108 to 156K, for an average bachelor's degree. That's the NCES data on an average bachelor's degree. I had a mom email me the other day, and she's a high income earner. She's from Florida as well. And she said that her daughter, she said, I don't want her to go to college. She said, like, I could read you the email that she sent me. She said, I do not want her to go to college. I'm very much against it. However, she's decided she's going to go to an Ivy League college. And she said, on principle, I'm not going to pay $90,000 a year, which is the cost of tuition for her to go to this college with no goal. She's like, I'm not going to do it. Right. And she very much knows that it's not going to get her where she wants to go in life. And her daughter's just going just to go. But her mother, again, the reason she would send her is because she thinks it's going to get her a good job. And her mother doesn't believe that anymore. Right. So she's not going to send her. Right. So I think that, and also the colleges, sorry, this is a couple different points because there's so much in what you're saying. Please. But I think as an industry, there is no other industry in our country that is allowed to sell bankruptcy-exempt loans to minors. And I think that if you are allowed to do that,
you have to make a little bit more honest representation of what you're selling.
Not only that, but I think you should be liable when you do not fulfill that. And I think that because most people, and if you look at the language of a lot of college websites, the marketing is absolutely not for the, I think if colleges were marketing the way that you said, I wouldn't be able to criticize them.
Oh, same.
If they were marketing like that, then they'd be fine. I would never say anything against them, but it's because they imply that you need it for successful employment, and that's the primary driver behind most applications. And so if you're going to do that and you're going to sell to children, then I believe that you should be liable when they do not get employment, because because my company, we charge a fraction of what the average is for 1 year, much less what the Ivy charge. And we place people in their desired career that usually is going to out earn the median master's degree holder within like 2 years. And so for us, like the ROI for me, when I look at that, and given we have different audiences, but I look at that and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like you should be. I feel like they should be liable for it.
I mean,
I feel like they should. They
the
can't take.
liability makes a lot of sense, but no, going back to what I was saying before, though, about the guarantee part, I think I'm just drawing a distinction here between the valid criticism they deserve for
Mhm.
making that guarantee,
Sure.
which is obviously not true,
Yeah.
right? And then at the same time, if I'm a parent just listening to this, right,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, okay, well, what am I going to decide to do for my kid,
Mhm.
right? Would they have a better chance of being employed, going to college, or not going to college? In a very fair number of cases, the answer is your odds are better with college. I mean, and if you're looking at, and I'm not saying this for everybody, by the way,
Sure.
and like, yeah, I think you and I will find agreement on degrees where, and this is something that I like to draw a distinction with my own audience, which where there's an objective indicator of performance, right? So, for example, like software engineering and tech
Mhm.
is a really great extreme example on the far side of college not making that big of an impact,
Mhm.
right? Because there are some independent certifications you can get. There is the ability for someone to just give you a coding interview and
Yeah.
just see if you can code, right? And so we can verify it. And so the college, for them, for software engineering especially, is serving a credentialing purpose.
Yes.
Now there's an education element attached to that, to the extent that that's even happening since COVID. We can get into that later.
Sure.
But like, there is mostly a credential, right? That they're getting out of that.
I agree.
And so, we can bypass that because there is an objective indicator of who's actually good at this thing, right? There are other fields where either that becomes too risky or the person evaluating you is another college, right? So medicine is the far other side of this,
Absolutely.
right? Where like, okay, the evaluation metric for whether or not you become a doctor is can you get into a medical school
Yes.
because the cartel American Medical Association decided to limit how many doctors we get.
A whole other issue, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Long story short, that is what's happening. And so your job, if your goal is to become a doctor, is you have to somehow get yourself into medical school.
Yes, you do.
Right. And so since the college is evaluating you and they're evaluating on the basis of academic credentials, I mean, you have a 0% success rate if you don't go to college.
Yes.
Right. And so there's going to be a lot of people who are in a position like this. And I'll tell you something else too. And you'll notice this correlates really nicely to the fields that people who actually currently attend Ivy League schools actually go to. So guess what the top recruitment path would be for an Ivy League student right now, if just based on current stats?
I'd say it's probably like top performing law firms. I'd say it's probably financial institutions. I'd say that it's probably we've probably got healthcare field, since that's one of the fastest growing in our country.
They can't go into healthcare. But with the bachelor's, almost never. They almost always will go for a graduate degree first. Law firms will never touch them for the same reason.
Interesting.
Guess who's hiring them?
Who's hiring them?
Financial institutions are a good chunk. That's probably number two.
Right. But I know that the credentialing in both finance, education, and healthcare has all been down. So,
Consulting.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah,
It's
sure.
consulting.
Like, EY. Yeah, sure.
No, but that's the crazy part, right? Because what does a consulting company even do? They're effectively...
What do they even do? They don't even know the answer to that question. They increase shareholder value. We make PowerPoints.
Right, well, so they're moving people, so they market themselves on the credential. So this is the crazy part. So a consulting company comes to a big corporation and says,
Sure.
we have 100 Harvard grads here who are the best and brightest people ever, so that when you, CEO, want to make your decision you want to make, and maybe it doesn't pan out, you can blame the Harvard grad so you don't look stupid.
Sure. Which I was okay. So it's a transfer of liability, and they're just papering them. They're just saying, oh, well, they're
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So here, I think we have to go back a little bit to first principles. So this
Sure.
is where kind of what I was talking about with
Please.
the research that I've done. So
Yeah.
because I think that I think that there is a case for Ivy League degrees for a very, very tiny percentage of people.
Yes.
So when I was talking about healthcare, I was thinking of like maybe they're going to Harvard and maybe they're going to Princeton or Brown or whatever, and they're getting like a bachelor's degree in like pre-med or something, and they're going into radiology or something that does require a 4-year degree, but they're able to get licensure.
Yeah.
But I guess those people are probably not going into those industries,
definitely not.
even though they're high paying. I mean,
Right.
and a lot higher paying than some of the lawyers that are coming out.
But it's not about the paying; it's about the status.
Sure.
They would rather. This is the crazy part. The people who are going to these schools, for the most part, would rather take a $30,000 a year job working for Congress than to take a job that pays 5 times as much.
Gross.
Yeah,
sure.
No, but this is a real thing.
I understand that.
So there are prestige jobs, right?
No,
so
that I understand.
journalism falls into this category.
Sure.
Staffing in politics falls in this category. A very large chunk of them will have so it's funny. I worked on the Hill for a few years.
Sure.
And I was the only guy in my whole office who went to a state school. Uh, and I, was one of a handful of people around me. I mean, most of these guys were like, Ivy League grads. And I'm just like,
Explains a lot about what's wrong with our country, to be perfectly honest with you. This explains a lot, but I think that so I think really this is important. We have to go back to basics, basically.
sure,
So,
tell me.
and a lot of this is because I think that when we're talking about Ivy Leagues, we're talking about such a small edge use case,
Yes.
and there's so few people who, even if they do fall into the small edge use case, it's actually going to work out for.
That's right.
And so for the vast majority of people, and this is where this is really important. A lot of people, when I talk about this, I'm coming from a position that the only time you need a college degree to do something, need is when it's legally required to do it. If that is not the case, there is another way in, always. And this is a lot of this is really important for parents to know, because Harvard Business Review did a study called Dismissed by Degrees. And in that, they found that 63% of people who are currently employed in jobs that say they require degrees do not have college degrees. This includes management, logistics, healthcare, all of these very secure jobs, all these high paying jobs, all these jobs that have skill sets that lead to business ownership. Now, the fundamental problem in our country is really three things. One, kids do not know what jobs are out there. That's a huge problem. They have no idea what jobs are out there. Most of them know about like 6 to 8 careers. It's always the same ones.
Right.
And you'll find, interestingly, that low income students tend to have the same 6 to 8 jobs, and high income students have the same range of jobs. They might have 1 or 2 different ones. And usually those will be the ones that their parents
Sorry,
have.
could you elaborate on that a little bit? When you say 6 to 8 jobs, I mean, those are the jobs like they're aware that exist?
Yes, correct.
They don't know about other jobs?
No. We call it vocational creativity. And this is actually a global problem, not a uniquely U.S. problem. So there was a survey done of, I believe it was about 700,000 kids globally. And globally, kids can only name about 10 careers. It's the same 10 careers. It's always the ones they can see. Of course, right? Kids don't know what they don't know. They can't walk through a door.
Around it. Yeah.
You can't know that you want to be a logistics, a logistics manager if you don't know what that is. You can't know that you want to be, you can't know that you want to be a UX UI designer if you don't know what that is.
Right.
And so it's interesting because that is really the limiting factor. They don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
And the people who teach them don't know what's out there, because the people who teach them are teachers.
Right.
Who also have a very limited range of vocational creativity because they took a job that was right in front of them.
Well, yeah.
Right. They just don't have...
You're being taught by somebody who fully bought into the system.
Well, and also, realistically speaking, the way that they view work as well, they believe that you have to get a degree to get work because they had to get a degree to get work.
Right.
Now, this is really important. This is actually one of the most interesting things I've found in my research. So, of all of the jobs in our country, how many do you think legally require college degrees?
I would say probably less than 10%.
Excellent. Wow. Most people do not get that.
I work in this industry.
Sure. It's between 7.15 and 9.58.
That makes
so
sense.
Less than 10%. Hit the nail on the head. Now,
Super low, yeah.
Most interesting part of this is what percentage of those jobs do you think are represented by degrees that are policy requirements, not actual requirements?
I would say at least half.
So 38% of those jobs are nurses, RNs, and teachers.
Yep.
So if you remove them, which is just policy from the last 20 years, and before, teachers were not required to have college degrees, and nurses were not required to have college degrees. The colleges love government money. So they went to the hospitals and they just went overhead and they said, hey, we're going to require all the nurses to get bachelor's degrees now. We want that money.
Right.
And there's absolutely no reason for that. Nurses could be absolutely trained and have credentials through hospitals, which is how it used to be.
Yeah.
And then teachers absolutely do not need college degrees to teach. They get the same outcomes in schooling, whether or not they have up to a master's degree. And this includes like secondary math.
Well, see, I think I want to separate those out for a second.
Sure.
And let's dive into that, because the nursing, I believe you with the certification, and I get that. Well, that one scares me a little bit too. I'm not going to lie. Like if you tell, I don't know. I feel like people want their healthcare professionals to have extra credentials just because you're a little afraid of that. And I'm not saying that
credentials and training. I think you'd rather have train. Yeah, because they used to be trained. Nurses used to be trained, and truthfully, our healthcare outcomes in our country used to be better when our nurses were trained more.
Well, 100%.
And also, you want people not to have debt. You don't want people in professions to have debt. Like that's never a good thing because it puts them under so much strain, right? Most people, their biggest stress is financial. And you see teachers who really like hate their jobs, they're unsatisfied with their lives. That's not going to have good outcomes on the kids. Same thing for nurses. Nurses work a really hard job and very draining. My mom was a nurse. My mom was an ER nurse. she did not have to go and get a bachelor's degree when she originally became a nurse.
Which is
It was
reasonable.
training.
Yeah.
It was training. And you'll find that a lot of the older nurses were trained that way. And
Want to know something crazy too? So one of my very close friends, who was a really great help when I was starting my business too, and he advised me, and it largely is one of the reasons why I was able to actually grow this the way I did. His wife is in charge of the emergency room for NYU in New York City, right? And she's been a nurse for like 20 something years.
time.
She manages dozens of other nurses. She's on top of a huge department.
Right.
Okay. NYU decided to force every nurse and every healthcare professional in their entire system to get a master's degree.
To keep their rating.
To keep
The hospital ratings. It's to keep their hospital status.
Is that it?
Yes, that's the reason.
That is,
and it's all a money grab because you have
that
these.
was disgusting.
Do you know why they do that? It's because you now know it makes up almost 40%. And they did the same thing to teachers,
right?
Which is they withhold a $2,000 raise from these people unless they go buy a master's degree because they know.
Well, in her case, they said they were going to fire her.
Yeah. That's what they do to the nurses because the nurses have the money, right? The teachers don't have that much money, so they don't mandate it for the teachers. They just dangle a little carrot. This is, you'll make another like $1,000 a year if you do this. It almost never has positive ROI for them either, right? That's one of the things. It's almost never worth it for them, but they do it a lot of the time because there's a lot of pressure on them. But it's just because you have this volume pool that you can just pull all this extra cash from, right? You already have this customer. The only way this customer can advance and make more money because of the profession they've chosen is to pull and so you've got this 40%, almost 40% of your legally required degree workforce, and you can just make them go buy more from you. Freaking genius, right? If you're a business, like you have a captive customer, but it makes their lives so much worse.
Yeah.
And it also causes shortages.
Yep.
For no reason other than a policy. It could literally be repealed like this.
Right.
That entire problem could be solved, and then all of a sudden you'd have a much more adjusted, much more accurate version. Because in 1965, that's when the Higher Education Act passed. So let's go back into the past a little bit.
Sure.
So 1965 is where a lot of these problems with colleges started, including the Ivies. So in the 1950s, I think it was Chancellor Brown said, like, I can't give this stuff away. Like, there's a quote from this guy where he's like, I cannot give this away. And it's funny because at the time that he was saying this, all of these GIs were coming back from World War II.
Right.
Okay. Grown men who'd been through war-hardened men, right? They come back and they have GI money. And the colleges love that.
Right.
Because all of a sudden they couldn't get anybody to buy this stuff.
By the way, they still love that for the same reason. We'll get into that. There's a reason. So I advise students a lot of the time, if they want to increase their odds in Ivy League admissions, to consider doing ROTC.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And
That's a great way to do it.
It's phenomenal because the college loves it because it's the equivalent of you attaching a full tuition check to your name.
Yes. It also is one of
Curse
the
of the
only times it makes sense because you are going to be a military officer, which you legally do have to have a degree in order to do. My dad was an officer, so I know like that makes sense. If that is the thing that fits your life the best, if that is the criteria that fits your life the best, you're willing to make the trade-offs that going into the military makes, then absolutely that makes total sense. That's actually one of the very few use cases. I think that an Ivy League college makes complete sense. Like,
Well, there's a few more we can get into that, but sorry, go ahead. Let's hear about the Higher Education Act.
So the Higher Education Act is the root of like most of the problems in our country right now. So this Higher Education Act, but before we get to that, so these GIs come back from World War II, war-hardened men, right? They come back. About 7% of the jobs in our country at this point require college degrees. So 7%, not a lot, right? Like not a lot of college degrees.
Not many more than now, it seems like.
It's about the same. It's actually a little bit less. And so these jobs are all jobs that are tied to legal degree requirements. So CPAs, lawyers, doctors, architects, even though technically you don't need a degree to be an architect, but it's one of the paths that it makes sense to go to college to do just because of the speed. But so these guys come back and they have this GI money, right? They get money to build houses. They get money to go to college. They go to college and they all get jobs that legally require degrees. So they're exactly as you said, they're now getting degrees that get them a license. The license is the valuable thing, not the degree. The license is the valuable thing. The same way for the nurses before they require degrees, it's the nursing license that's valuable, not the college degree.
Well, I want to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I think there is something valuable aside from the license. There's a few valuable things.
Okay.
And it's worth delineating those because if we're going to critique this, I want to be a little more nuanced about this because you are learning things. And historically at these colleges, you were actually learning job relevant information.
Yes.
And especially at the higher end. And I think there's a difference and a valid difference between, I want to draw this distinction really clearly between professions that have material that you can teach in a college setting versus things that the colleges, they kind of just created degrees for it. And I have no idea how on earth they ever got the idea they can teach it. Right. So I'll give a great example. Like you get an economics degree. They actually can teach you economics. By the time you graduate, you will genuinely learn the academic field of economics to a high degree. That is a teachable thing. Physics. I got degrees in physics.
Sure.
I learned real things in physics.
Yeah.
Like it's not, I didn't just have the credential. I really actually learned very interesting things about physics. Had I continued doing physics research for many years, I would still be applying those things. Fair enough. When you switch that now we talk about a field like business. If you ever started a company, well, one of the first things, and I tell people this, and I say this with love, okay, but I'm going to say this to the people now. People are going to get mad at me for this, okay?
Well, I think I better get used to it. This episode's going to be like that.
People are going to get mad enough regardless, but I'm going to say the truth anyway.
Sure.
If you are studying entrepreneurship in college, you already failed as an entrepreneur.
100% agree.
You already failed. And
100%
if you failed the question, you signed up for and then the reason why you failed is because, okay, if the person teaching you entrepreneurship knew the very first thing about entrepreneurship,
They would not be there.
you couldn't hire them. You couldn't hire that guy.
You could not afford
Now,
it.
there are ways to learn entrepreneurship as an apprentice.
Yes.
Right? You can go work for a very talented business owner and learn a lot about running a business, which you should if you want to run a business yourself. I always tell people to do that. I have people that come to me all the time saying, hey, I want to start my own business. I always tell them, go work for somebody who you respect in your field for a little bit.
I say the same thing.
Understand how the company works. Then go do your own thing.
Yes.
Because it'll save you a lot of mistakes that will cost you a lot of money and a lot of time for no reason.
100%
Now,
agree.
with the but there's a lot of fields. I would say now the majority of degrees that are given are way more like that than they are like my physics degree. My physics degree, my math degree, and I think a good metric for this is actually a good one. Did your degree exist before 1965?
Yes. So, okay. So this is where this is like, oh man, I love to get in the nitty gritty of
Please
this
tell
because like
me.
nobody cares about my theories, but I've done so much reading about this,
Okay,
and then
I care.
I have a friend who's he was a physics. He was a physics professor, but he was a physicist at Los Alamos. So he's quite a bit older. He has some interesting viewpoints on this as well. But so let's go back to 1965, right?
Yeah.
So these or pre 1965. These guys are coming back from World War II. They have GI money in their pockets. The colleges are hurting for money because, again, as the Chancellor Brown said, I can't give this stuff away for free. And then all of a sudden the colleges are like, ooh, they get a little taste. And they're like, oh, that's nice. Like nobody loves us. Nobody pays us.
Right.
And then as per usual, the government comes in and screws everything up.
Yeah.
And so 1965, the Higher Education Act passes. At this point, this allows parents to take out the loans. And so this is now where you start to like pull the wealth. So 1965, right? About 7% of the jobs require degrees. And people are just attributing this economic boom to these guys coming back from World War II with this money in their pocket. They don't have debt. They're going for only professional degrees that do give them some sort of either, like you said, some very, very logical, very verifiable sort of actual education.
Yeah.
And I think that this is important because college is not education. Like those things are not synonyms. Some colleges do educate and college degrees are an educational product. And I think that just talking about that from an unemotional standpoint is very important because they've become so conflated. Like they can't be career training and they can't be educated. They can't just flip flop depending on the day and how badly they're doing at one thing.
Sorry, but just want to interject for a second because like what's crazy about that is the way that liberal arts schools in particular will handle this, because that blows my mind. And I think this has to do with like the differing views people have in education. And I like that you're separating that because there's a difference between career training.
Yes.
There's a difference between education for a subject, and there's a difference between education for education's sake.
Yes.
Which they market as like a higher ideal as if it has economic utility for everybody.
Yes.
And it definitely doesn't.
Well, that's why the why is so important.
Right.
And that's why people getting clear on what you're actually getting from this and whether or not that serves your family is very important.
Right.
And this is why, so 1965, the Higher Education Act passes. Now, at the same time, what also happens, so by 1976, this is very important.
Yeah.
By 1976, they have to amend the Higher Education Act. So 11 years, only 11 years. The
Okay.
default rate on the loans in 1965 was 2%.
Yep.
By 1976, the default rate on the loans was 9%.
Yikes.
Yeah, not good. So,
So,
for people,
let's pause there. Yeah, because people, I think, don't understand the finance side of this. In 2008, the housing crash happened because the default rate on mortgages was, I believe, what, 7%? I think it was when it started going out of control. So, like, this is very, very bad as a default rate for loans. But sorry,
in
go
a
ahead.
very short amount of time.
Very short,
And it's
yeah.
because as soon as the public money was available, people started going.
Right.
And colleges, at this point, your metric, brilliant. That's a brilliant observation. If your major did not exist before 1965, because then the colleges was like, shoot, what else can we sell these people?
Yep, exactly.
Right, because
They
they're
started
businesses
coming up with all brand new products.
Right. And so they're like, oh, here. And then also, so not only did that happen, but then, so 1976, they had to amend the Higher Education Act because the
lovely.
default rate was so high.
Yeah.
Right. It went up 350%, which is freaking
Yep.
insane in such a short amount of time.
100%.
And also, in that period of time, not only did the amount of people spike that were going that didn't need to go, but the Vietnam War happened. And what was the only way to not get sent to Vietnam?
Go to college.
Go to college.
Yep.
So it was just kind of a perfect storm, right? And so 1976, now they're like, oh, frick, this is really bad. Like, this is going to cause a huge problem. So 1976, they amend the Higher Education Act. And then, now this is also really important. So all of these numbers on college, right? Our economy was strong in the 1980s. So it kind of disguised the ROI for most people. But the amount of people going was still going up because now you had generations
Yep.
of like, oh, you need to go to college because I went to college.
Yep.
And like, that's going to give you a good job. But like, it wasn't the degree, it was the jobs that they were choosing, right? And then something else happened that's really important that's still affecting us now about the reporting of the numbers and the ROI. And all of this is not necessarily malicious, like it's just a compounding effect of all these policy changes and people not being able to see what the true picture is. So in 1980, they decided that when they were measuring household wealth, household income, it was the husband, the man was the head of household. Then in 1982, women surpassed men in bachelor's degree holders as bachelor's degree holders. So more women had bachelor's degrees. And at that point, they combined the way they were measuring the household wealth, and they made it so that the degree holder in any household is now any household. So if you have a husband that does not have a degree and a wife that does, that's a degree holder household now. So they were able to absorb the earnings of people and then say that that's the result of a college degree. So for example, how that's played out now. So currently right now, Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla, right? Mark Zuckerberg's income is attributed to her degree. Joe Rogan's wife has a bachelor's degree. That's the way it's measured. And it's the Brookings Institute. You can look this up. This is how they measure it.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding at all. And it's very much obscuring the actual result.
Okay, so just to make this really clear, they changed the way that they're measuring the economic outcome of a degree.
Correct.
Such that if you have a household where there's a non-degree holder who typically is still usually the one working and making income, but there's a degree holder who may be even like, functionally retired, we're going to attribute the income of that household to the person who may not even be working because they have a degree.
Correct. And this is very important.
That's so bad.
Right. And you see how now, like, right?
So bad.
And then let's talk about, like, we could talk about the slabs too, right? The student loan asset-backed securities, which looks exactly like the freaking mortgage.
Okay, I want to hear about this.
Okay.
So how does that work exactly?
Okay, so the student loan asset-backed securities, there's basically there's a market. There's a market for student loans. And the market for student loans now, they're not actively selling these anymore, probably because it's getting too risky, right? They stopped selling them because it's not going to go well. There's nothing backing these loans. It's exactly like if you've ever seen The Big Short, where they're talking about the ratings, they're talking about the different tranches and how they're rating these loans. Same thing with the student loan asset-backed securities. People can look this up. It's called the slabs, and it's just a market.
So I want to slow down just to make sure our audience is understanding this part. So when you get a student loan, it doesn't stop with you. Right. So what happens is, just so you guys understand the way student loans work, because I think a lot of people miss this. We should probably unpack that first.
Yeah.
When you get a loan, the college gets paid up front. Then the bank owns a thing called a note, which is the legal right to collect on your debt. And they're going to keep holding that note for exactly as little time as they possibly humanly can, right? Because that's what banks do, right? Once they have your debt, they package it up with a bunch of other debt. So it's really risky to have one person's loan because the odds of one person defaulting on the loan or not paying it back is super high. So what they do is they decide, well, why don't I collect it with like 100 other people? and I can put this into a big package. That's called a tranche, right? And they say, well, the odds of all 100 people defaulting on their loans, pretty low, right? So then the interest rate's likely to be higher than the default rate, right? And so it's more likely to be profitable as a group than as an individual. And they say, great, let's sell 1,000 of these to an investment bank. And then, and then the investment banks say, okay, that's great, but I don't trust you anyway, so I'm going to get insurance. And there's insurance. And what this leads to is a thing called a derivative market. So you end up having side bets on the original bet of if they're going to pay back the loan. And it just goes on and on and on. Now, in 2008, people did this with mortgages, right? Because people thought everybody pays their mortgage. Who doesn't pay their mortgage? Turns out a lot of people don't pay their mortgage. And it turns out that when you don't have restrictions on who can be given a mortgage in the first place, then you get a ton of people being given mortgages they can't pay it back. And then the banks just go crazy. Well, student loans kind of had a similar moment, and this became a lot worse. I'm going to bring something up we haven't even mentioned yet. I'm sure you're familiar with the policy change under Bush in 2002 that made them non-dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Yes, I am.
Right.
Well, it was also an amendment because they had to do that in the 90s as well. So it was basically they just had to strengthen that because people were still going to court and they were still
succeeding.
Yes, correct. So they had to steal that up.
Yeah. So back to the loan conversation. I want to go back to this then. But for the loans, here's the thing: if a bank knows that there's a real risk that you might not pay back the loan, then on its own, the bank would have actually served that function of bringing everybody back to reality real quick, right? Because they would have gone to the kid and say, "Oh, you're paying $400,000 for a degree in gender studies." Yeah, no, like we're not giving you that money for it because the odds that you would pay us back, it's basically zero.
Yes.
Now, it's one thing if your family wants to pay for that. And if you want to go there and have that degree, and by the way, this is not me saying something wrong on any other level about somebody who wants to study gender studies. There might be some people who want to do that. If you have the money in your own family and you want to pay to study that,
why not?
Have fun.
Yeah.
Okay. But I, as a bank, investing in you, that'd be a very bad investment, right? And so what's going to happen is the bank on its own would have said, well, wait a second, we're not going to give you the loan for this. But then the government doesn't like that, right? Because then, there's people who, they call it an access issue. They say you can't go to college, right? And so then the government says, well, wait a second, we are going to protect you, bank, by saying that this is the one kind of debt in this world that there's literally no way you can ever get rid of it.
Yes.
And for reference, like credit card debt, if you really mess up, let's say like you're a young kid and you're stupid and you run up like $20,000 in credit card debt.
Or you buy a bad car or something. You buy a lemon or something.
Yeah, exactly. You buy a lemon, you have some other kind of problem. Let's say you buy a mortgage that you can't afford. Okay. This happens to people all the time. There's a way for you to get rid of that stuff. It's called bankruptcy. It sucks, but it only sucks for a limited period of your life, right? So your credit will be ruined for 7 years, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not super educated on that, but yeah, I believe it's not that long.
It's a few years. You can't take any other kinds of loans out. They kind of put you in timeout for being stupid, and you learn your lesson, and you can try again later. Okay,
yeah,
that's basically what it is, right?
That's an elegant explanation. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But student loans are the one kind of debt that no matter how dumb you were when you were 18, and by the way, a lot of people I think would have chosen this option at this point, right?
Yeah.
They would have said, well, wait a second. I have a lot of my friends, I'm a millennial, and so like a lot of my millennial friends who all went to college and they got degrees and a bunch of stuff is definitely not paying them now. And now they're stuck with like $170,000 in debt. They can't start families. And then they're looking at this and they're saying, man, wouldn't it be really great if I could declare bankruptcy right now? And they can't.
And they cannot.
Right?
It's so predatory. It's so predatory.
It's crazy.
And then when you find out that there's a secondary debt market where they're betting on it,
that's the
the
worst.
thing is, what you and I both know about the housing crisis is at least there was something for the bank to seize.
Yes,
that's the thing that's so terrifying to me about this is there's literally nothing for the bank to seize on the loans. It's just the labor.
Why does that make it worse? Let's explain that.
Because there's no physical asset that the bank can take. Like at least a house, even if it's a rather worthless house, still worth a little bit, right? It's land, it's a house,
right.
Like, it has some utility. The only thing backing these loans is labor.
Right.
And that's scary because it's scary for the graduates, but it's also scary it should be scary for the government and for taxpayers because if they just don't work, like a lot of them are not working right now, because I'm sorry, but as far as unemployment, young men are more likely to come out of college with a mental disorder than they are with a job. Like It is not good right now.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying. Like as a society, we should all be very concerned about the fact that all people have to do to destroy the country right now, like the economy, is just not work, which is a really easy thing to do.
And it's terrifying because the AI is kicking in at the same time, and a lot of people are afraid of losing their jobs. I don't think that's going to happen. But
It only took 6,000 jobs last year.
I think it's,
and I don't even think it was that many.
I think it's going to add more than that, to be honest with you.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
But going back to the first part, I just want to, again, this is a really, I think you and I are operating at a different level here than a lot of people's understanding of like how the loan market works. This is really important to understand that there is, when you have loan markets and like layers of debt like this, and let's say something goes wrong with the debt, in this case, like people not being able to pay it back.
Right.
With the housing market, believe it or not, people remember that the 2008 crash like threatened the whole global economy,
Yes.
very dangerous. And the reason was because it got way bigger than just the debt itself, right? It got to the point where, okay, now if this debt collapses here, but then it's going to affect everything else because there's like ripple effects throughout the whole economy. What people don't fully understand about that, I think, is that that particular debt crisis was backstopped by what you were saying. It was backstopped by the physical value of the existing homes
Land.
that could be in the land, right? That could be seized as collateral. Because for better or worse, there is a minimum value to land in the United States.
Because it's a fixed.
It's a scarce quantity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so it's very, and like no one, I think I've actually never heard anyone talk about it before. And I'm like, how are you guys not freaked out by this? Because again, it's very obvious in this conversation.
Yeah.
You have you're far more educated on the market and on the financial aspects. Like that's really not my wheelhouse. I'm about the current
actual
solution.
practical reality for the
Yeah,
parents.
yeah. Like it's very obvious. Like I'm already out of my depth because you have a much deeper understanding of the economics. I just know the history of it. That's all I know. But I'm like,
the economics of it is scary though, because this means that just put this in context for people, right? 2008 was a big nuclear bomb on the financial world.
Yes.
But it was actually limited in how big that bomb can spread.
Yes.
Because there's some hard value at the bottom of it.
Yes.
Okay. The education debt market, if that goes belly up, there's nothing at the bottom of this except
Labor.
The government by threat of violence forcing you to work.
Yep.
Which is like,
and people are not scared enough about that. I'm like,
No.
I don't think you guys people just do not understand. And it's like, there's just so much here because it's like, that's its own problem. But then the only solution, truthfully, to this, Andres, is I think people have got to stop buying college degrees. Like Americans are addicted to paper. We're addicted to paper. Like we have got to stop it. And it's the people, I think a lot of the people who need to stop are middle-class people.
Yeah.
I'm like, I come from a lower middle-class family. Like my family was on food stamps when I was growing up.
Right.
But then, my dad was a military officer. My mom was a nurse. Like we were okay. If I had gone to college, if I had actually gone, it would have ruined my life. It would have ruined my life. I would have had debt. I would never have never felt like I could start a business. I would have never felt like I could have a family. I would have never felt like I could get married.
Yeah.
And it would have crippled like my loans alone. If I had gone for what I was a journalism major. Journalism majors, by the way, have the biggest reality gap for what they think they're going to make, what they pay, right? And so it's ironic.
That's why I'm saying it's a prestige profession. Because but the funniest thing I ever experienced was when I was working in Washington. Was the journalists that were around us. And I would hang out with a lot of these guys that were friends with me, and most of them were trust fund kids.
Yeah, and this is a controversial thing to say, but if you're a trust fund kid, it doesn't matter what you do because you you can do whatever you want. And people are like, access issue, as you said, like, but that means only rich kids can do X, Y, Z, and it's like, no. It means that only rich kids can comfortably pay the amount of money it costs to go to college to then do those things.
Well, I don't know why people get upset about that, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of other things in this world that only rich people can access that we kind of look at that and we say, like, okay, well, if you're a rich person, you have the right to do some frivolous stuff because you're rich.
Because you're rich.
It's like, okay, yeah, only rich people are going to go, I don't know, like blow $5,000 on some, giant dinner with all their friends and get like weird bottle service at Poppy Steak.
Yeah.
The rest of us are going to look at that and say like, okay, well, you're probably like, doing something irresponsible. Okay. Well, maybe for you, it's not irresponsible, but for me, that would be irresponsible. And I don't really get upset about it. I'm just kind of like, all right, rich people doing rich people things.
That's
like,
just
whatever.
how it is. But I think that when you're a business owner, I think you have a little bit more, and my family's not business owners, but I'm like, oh yeah, there's just limits to what you are able to do. Like the money can only go so many places.
It's not that deep.
But I think it's not that deep. But I think so many people, like one of the comments I get most often on my content is, well, rich people send their kids to college. I'm like, are you rich?
Yeah.
Are you going to buy your kid a Ferrari? Rich people buy their kids Ferraris. Are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Rich people fly their kids first class. Are you going to do that?
Right.
How do you think that that's going to help them in the future? I'm like,
No.
just because it's a college degree, and this is why separating education and college is so important.
Yep.
Because the thing is, it's robbing people of economic mobility when they think it's going to get them economic mobility. And that's the thing that's like the biggest travesty, because I'm like, they're preying on you because they know you don't have the financial literacy. And again, as I just said, I did not grow up with much financial literacy. That's really not my strong suit. Like, it's very clear in this conversation that you know a lot that I do not know about that.
Yeah.
But people like me, which is going to be the majority of Americans, should not be sending their kids to college, especially not right out the gate.
Yeah.
The irony being that if they didn't do that, they'd be able to pay cash for their kids' college.
Right.
In like when their kids turn 25, because that mom I was telling you about, she has two daughters. Her oldest daughter is 18, and again now applying for applying for the Ivies, and she's going to pay $90,000 in tuition because they're not going to be eligible for aid at all. And a lot of people are also, I think, a lot of families who are falling prey to this are like, they're high income. She's high income, this mom. Like, she's got money, but still she's not going to get return on that, and she's just going, while I can pay it, it's a lot of money, and it just doesn't really make sense.
Well, the people who get victims of this often are small business owners. I mean, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, when I was in high school, so I started doing physics research at Brookhaven National Lab when I was like 15.
Oh, wow.
And,
That's the ideal setup.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And I was a very, very talented at physics. I, had a great, future in that field had I chosen to continue to pursue that. And so when I applied to college, I got into a bunch of places. Originally, I committed to go to Cornell because the chair of the physics department at the time wrote me this beautiful letter of recommendation. He was part of the same research group that I was a part of when I was working at Brookhaven.
Cool.
And, that was going to work out great for me, except my parents are small business owners. My dad has a company that sells natural sea sponges, and literally the assets of the company, as in, I'm not joking with you, sea sponges.
Yes.
Okay. We had 5 tons of natural sea sponges. Our income was very low.
Yes.
I was on food stamps when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But because of his sea sponges that he had in a warehouse, they denied us financial aid.
Yeah.
And so I was forced to choose between either going $300,000 into debt at age 17, or I had to find somewhere else to go to school. And thank God, I also got into Stony Brook University, and I was able to negotiate with them, and I ended up getting a full scholarship, and I went there, and it was free, and that changed my whole life. And I got to tell you, though, and I want to bring this in because I feel like we're glossing over a little bit of the emotional experience of a lot of these kids, because there's people who are, I think, the people who are the most tempted by these degrees are the people who are the highest performers in their class. And this is a hard...
This woman's daughter is that. She's literally... She's top for her class.
Yeah, but can I tell you, that is the... that is the hardest thing for you to turn down, because there is a social element to this, and there's an ego element to this.
Yes.
And when I got into Cornell, and I got into a bunch of other schools as well, that was the validation of all of the hard work I had been doing for all these years, right? And for me to go to a school like that, it would be for me to then say to my peers, like, hey, look at me. Like, I'm going to a school that matches my ability level and that matches my self-perceived social status, right? And the social status part was the most important part of all of this. And it was, who am I going to be around? And how am I going to present myself in public? And then, at the time, though, I just looked at it and, I'm decent at math, right?
Obviously.
And so I looked at the math, and I just ran the numbers in my head. I'm just like, okay, so I'm at $300,000 in debt. That's going to compound at between a 5 to an 8% interest rate. I'm going to have to pay that off by the time I graduate. So that's going to be a service rate somewhere in the neighborhood of like what, $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
To service that. That's a lot. And it could keep growing if I don't pay the service rate, because I was probably going to go, sorry, I should clarify. When I'm doing that math, I'm assuming I'm going to get a PhD in physics as well.
Sure.
Right. And so I was going to have my $300,000 from undergrad, and then at least the deferred opportunity cost from spending 7 years getting a PhD while the debt compounds.
Right.
Right. And I looked at that and I said to myself, okay, I am going to be a bank's slave for the rest of my life.
Yes.
So no thanks. So,
And people are just this. You're right, though. So much of it is emotional, and I think that's why. This is why I actually don't tell people, and I've never told anyone not to go to college.
Well, tell me about that, because that wasn't the impression I was getting. Okay,
I've never.
please tell me about that.
I have posted thousands of thousands of hours of
Yeah.
content on the internet. I've never once said that, because you
Cool.
can't tell anybody that as a blanket
Yeah.
statement, because this choice is so individual and it's so dependent on everyone's unique
Right.
circumstances. The beauty of that is that, and a lot of this is because I believe that everybody has their unique place
Yeah.
that's going to fit them. And this is very important, because what you were saying about success, like, I think that parents really need to key into this. You need to sit down with your kids, because if the goal for from K through 12 has been college, which it is right now, like from a policy level, the goal, our success metric, our North Star success metric of K through 12 education in the United States across all different types of education is college acceptance. If that is the goal, the only way for your child to be successful is to get accepted into college and then go.
Yeah.
Right. The goal is wrong. The goal should be success. Now, success is why I can't just say, oh, yeah, people should go to college. Success, the definition of
It's
success
gonna be different for everybody.
is different for everybody, because success is getting what you want out of life.
Yeah.
And if your child,
So is intelligence, by the way.
well, and I've heard Naval Ravikant say that. So like, it's very, I was like,
It's
oh,
true.
that's good. I mean, because I agree 100%. And that's why it's so important. And this is what a lot of the reason I started Degree Free was because I did not have my eyes open when I was when I was 18. I did 17, 18. I was not informed enough. I didn't understand. And this is like stuff that's just fundamental, that instead of teaching kids that the goal of K through 12 education is college acceptance, the goal of K through 12 education is to figure out what you need from your life. Where do you want to live and build your life? How much income do you need or want in order to do the things that you care about in your life? It doesn't matter what it is. If you need 30 grand a year, if you need 300, if you need 3 million, you have to figure out what you want to do. You have to figure out what kind of schedule you want to work. And this is whether you want to be a business owner or a W-2 or a contract, the agents, doesn't matter. And then you have to figure out what sort of work environment you want to go into. And this is such a dynamic conversation, because I think too, I want to talk about from a woman's perspective. I think that's something that is there's a travesty. Most women go to college. Women go to college at the highest rate, and we buy the most degrees. Like we buy the most paper. And something that is often glossed over that causes a great deal of unhappiness is that if you do that, and that has been your goal, but what was not talked about was the life that you want. Like, so for some women, they don't want to have kids, and that's fine, right? But if you do want to have children and you want to have and then raise your children in a certain way, but you make certain decisions when you're 17 or 18 years old, you will not be able to do those things. And it is going to cause you a great deal of unhappiness, and it's going to cause you a great deal of stress.
When you say you won't be able to do those things, what kind of things will you not be able to do?
So for instance, like have a flexible schedule enough to be a mom, like, to be a stay-at-home mom, or to even be a partially stay-at-home mom. So for instance, if your daughter, and again, this is, I was good at English in high school. You got to fall into a trap, right? You're good at English, you're good at math, you're going to do X, Y, Z, you're going to do X, Y, Z. And it was for me, I was given 3 choices.
Okay.
Be a journalist. Sure. Be a writer.
Okay.
And then you're going to love this.
Okay.
And then be a lawyer.
Okay.
Right.
That's good.
Also, by the way, these are of the ones that girls know about, of the jobs girls know about.
Top of the
These are
list.
the ones. Yep. It's a psychologist, teacher, social worker, lawyer, right? And then the last one was English professor. Those are my 3 that I was told my guidance counselor, this is what you should go do. Right. Very high debt for all of those.
Very low.
The only one of them required a degree.
Well, can I tell you the problem with a lot of those careers, and I'm going to just, I take a very different approach with a lot of the students that I coach. So, I mean, I have a very small 50-person program where I coach students very long term.
Sure.
As part of that program, my primary goal is to identify their talents early and then nurture those with projects that we build together so they can develop those talents independent of what they're doing about college. And I've had students, multiple students. I mean, one of my students this year turned down a Stanford acceptance to just go start his own company.
Good.
I've had students do other stuff like that too. Most of my students will end up going to these colleges.
Sure.
Right? For different reasons than the ones we've described up to this point.
Sure.
Valid reasons, and I would have counseled them otherwise if it wasn't.
It's up to them and their families, right?
No, but for them, it made a lot of sense. And the reason I do so much work to try to figure out their talents early is because I think people misunderstand how wide the spectrum of professions has gotten in 2026.
I agree with that.
And the internet just blew the freaking lid off of that. And you can make a career today out of pretty much anything that you're remotely good at.
Yes. Yes.
Anything.
Yeah.
Like actually anything. Like as an example, okay, we're sitting here having this conversation, okay? Yeah. I'm able to start a business. I employ almost 50 people at this point because I happened to be really good at guiding kids to get through the Ivy League admissions process and reasonably good at being persuasive and speaking, and a couple other cute things they do on the side. But like that allowed this to exist, right? And when I spoke about this online, you can find, I mean, one of my students, it's funny, she actually is the producer for the podcast now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
Cool.
Ariana, who you spoke to, and she'll be coming on the podcast soon. Actually, we'll bring her on. She's in her first year at Berkeley. She, at this point, has started like 2 or 3 other companies, and I just invested in a company that she's starting now that's doing digital marketing.
Oh, wow.
And, she's just rattling this stuff off, in part because we were working with her for a long time to explore her talents in a bunch of different areas. She's published like 4 books at this point. She's an excellent writer, a really cool poet, and she was able to develop those skills, and she's been making money this whole time, by the way. Okay. She's able to pay full tuition at Berkeley from her own pocket because she was able to generate it like that. And the reason I'm just saying this is because I think, going back to your point from before, you were given 3 professions. That's kind of freaking nuts.
It's insane.
And I don't think anyone probably took the time to actually measure your talents and skills to even give you a real answer to that question.
I think I agree with that, but I think most high school students are going to fall into that category because 62% of high school seniors are going to go to college, right? So that's 8 times more college. That's 8 times more college graduates than there are jobs that legally require degrees, and most of them are going to go through a system that did not do that at all. Instead, you get like you're relatively good at theater, and this is also why you get most kids are like, oh, I'm artistic, I'm whatever, because of course they are. The boring classes at school are chemistry and math and algebra, right? The cool classes, the fun classes, are the ones where you don't have to do, you don't have to do that.
You and I may have had different experiences with that, but
sure. No, but then the flip side of that is the engineering kids too, because we've had like so there's a couple different stories here, but like we had a kid who left Texas A&M engineering. And he was just like, I don't like, this is miserable. Like, I hate it here, at 19. And then 19 years old, he's like, this is miserable. I hate it. Like, he thought he had to go do that, and Texas A&M has a good engineering program. They do. Relatively, right?
Yeah.
And of degrees, petroleum engineers are the highest earning. Like, petroleum engineers,
great degree to have.
Also one that's legally required. but anyway, so he just didn't work out for him. He didn't like it. And he came through our program. And then I think he was only in the program for like 3 weeks before we found him something. Field engineering,
awesome.
Field service engineering, medical device, right? So think Da Vinci robots and stuff like that, right?
Sick.
This is not something that requires a college degree. High earning, good pay, like is going to get him his version of success that he wanted, right? Which is where he wanted to live and the type of provision he wanted to have for a family in the future. So like his criteria are met. He's 19, no experience, but working at a snow cone place before this, and then there's just, and then we had another young man who was at UPenn, and he just lost, just no idea what he was doing or why he was there. And his mom.
And that's surprisingly common. And I think it's because of what some of you mentioned previously. Like, you said a few times, and I agree with you about this, that the goal of K through 12 education is getting into college, right? But that becomes your teleology as a person. Right, that becomes like.
Can you define that word? I'm not familiar.
Yeah. So, sorry, I get philosophical.
No, I love.
So the telos philosophically, it's a Greek word, means like the end.
Telo. Okay.
Yeah. What is the end of your life? Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. What is your North Star? Right, as you used before. So same word, right? So when I say like this becomes your teleology, as in like we created this goal for a educational system as like an industrial base because it was an easy thing to measure.
Yes.
And not just, I think, because it was easy to measure. I think the other reason they did it is because they had some not good evidence that suggested that, there was a correlation between people going to college and making a lot of money, which definitely was true in the 70s and is nowhere near true today. But
because of what we were talking about earlier, is what they were getting degrees in, is what they were being employed in.
I want to talk about the IQ distributions too in a moment, because that's going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, no one's going to like that.
But for reference, it used to be that they used to quote the stat that was measured in the 60s, that the average IQ of an undergraduate was 120. And it used to be accurate. Sure. And today the average IQ of an undergrad is 100, which is the average IQ of everybody.
Right.
So it doesn't actually say anything.
It's what it tells you is you're selling degrees to people you shouldn't sell degrees to.
But I want to go back to
again, I'm one of those people. I'm literally one of those people. I say that humbly as one of those people, like quite literally.
Well, and you could go pretty far up that spectrum and still be in that situation. I don't want to get too sidetracked with this, but I want to go back to the meaning thing because we're on a really cool point there that I think we need to address. The number of students I talk to who have gotten into one of these elite colleges. These will be brilliant kids. They get into Ivy League schools. They go there, and then they're just totally lost. Is nuts because we told them your whole life, your whole job, your only job is getting to the college, and you got into the college. So you're kind of like the dog that caught the car after chasing it. You know,
what do I do now?
What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? They don't know, and then the colleges they come to them with all these like fake answers of like, well, you know what you should really do if you don't know what to do with your life? Law school. Okay.
Yeah. And they sell them more paper. Yes. Yeah. This is why. So I also do want to make a point about Ariana.
Yeah.
That is, if you are going to go to college, this is why I don't tell people to go or not. So people, should I go to, I don't know. I didn't talk to you. I don't know. But for her, if you're making money, right, why shouldn't she buy a Ferrari? That's a great example. Like if things are going well and you're able to buy a Ferrari and you want a Ferrari, then buy a Ferrari. Who cares?
Right.
And that's why when I talk about this, it's a lot of times I get accused of anti-intellectualism, which is a silly made up thing from a sociology 1100 class. But I do want to address it because I think this is huge. People just say, oh, the rise of anti-intellectualism when you criticize like an industrial complex that's putting so many young people in debt and literally ruining their lives. But if you can afford to, in the same way that you should criticize the car industry, if they're selling cars to people that shouldn't be buying those cars, right? Like I don't like car dealerships right off of military bases where these young guys walk in, they just got a signing bonus and they're buying a Mach 1 Mustang. Like like you should criticize that because it's unethical and everybody should be bothered by unethical sales to children. That's not good. But for her, if you can buy a Ferrari and you want a Ferrari, then buy a Ferrari. Do it. And that's why, like, what I want is a system where if people are buying degrees, there isn't that criticism because either they're going in fully informed or they're buying it for the love of it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, actually, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
And you may have considered this already, but I want to try to break your frame on this for a second because I think this will be kind of interesting. I think that there's more than one America that is going to these colleges. And there are cultural and religious differences that are affecting our view of what a college is and what a college does.
I agree.
And that is the reason why you're getting that anti-intellectualism backlash. Because let me just separate this out for a few things. We talked about this, I think, a little while ago, but I want to just lay out for you, if I could, like the case of like why I see a lot of people that will go to Ivy League schools. And, let's start from the most objective, right? So the obvious case is, okay, I'm a super, super, super bright STEM person, let's say. Okay.
And that's the best place for access.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you're doing science research and access like that, I studied physics in college. Sure. I am blessed that the college I went to, thank God I was able to go for free, but it was also right next to a national laboratory. It was staffed by the Simons Center, and, God bless Jim Simons. He brought the best physicists and mathematicians from the whole world to Stony Brook University. They're awesome. These guys are out of control. And so I got a great education there. But if it wasn't for that particular college I went to, the Ivy League and other top colleges are the only kind of place where you can get that kind of education in that field. You have to go to one of those places. The difference when you go a bit down the spectrum is very large, right? So that's like the obvious case for like the pre-academic track, right? Which makes sense. And you could apply this to other fields as well. Then you have people who are doing it for licensure, the way that you're describing. There's a lot of legal requirements, which is not the only reason why people go to college. There's a lot of professions that don't legally require it, but you're not going to it's extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to learn the material otherwise.
Well, I will push back on that just because of the stats. Sure. Just because of the stats. Right now, if you look at the ZipRecruiter numbers, it's 12% of jobs even mention a degree at all. On Indeed, it's 17.8%. On LinkedIn, it's less than 1 in 5.
Well, no, I'm making a different point.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
What I'm saying is that, let's take a great example. There's no legal requirement that you need a physics degree to be a physicist.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It is, I will tell you from experience, it's nearly completely impossible to learn that kind of stuff without someone super talented holding your hand and teaching you the whole time.
I think that if we wanted to do a better job in our country of having more of those people, we would increase the distance between high school and those opportunities the way that you did.
Yeah.
We had an R&D polymer chemist on our podcast. He's degree free. His name is Joe Kowalski. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And he was bright when he started, right? He started working on the floor.
Right.
He was working on the floor and then he ended up in lab process engineering, which you don't need a degree to do. We have a really good friend who is a process engineer at a very big name semiconductor factory, and he says all the time, he's like, I didn't need to go to college for this. And this friend of ours we have is brilliant. He's like, I didn't need a.
Well, but the brilliance is part of why he gets to say that, and it's worth noting.
Sure.
The more brilliant you are, the more likely it is you get to do that. And because listen, I did the same thing.
That's why I wish we could get these. That's why I think kids like now this podcast is going to go wildly off the rails.
Sure.
Like the children yearn for the minds.
Okay.
But I seriously, like why is it
The children yearn for the
like
minds.
you have not heard that? Like the children yearn for the minds. Like they want to work. I think that a huge, like they want to work. Like children,
They do.
if you've been around and a huge
No, yeah, because it's fun.
Yes.
It makes you feel like mature. It makes you feel
Yes.
valued.
Well, and you learn. And the thing is, like, I think a lot of things were better when we did let kids work a lot younger. We didn't have these very tight restrictions. I see why the restrictions exist. I just think that they're maybe a little bit wrong, a little bit too strict, and that they ban kids from industries they should be allowed to go into.
Well, I'm not advocating for the restriction, though. I'm just saying it as a means of efficiently transmitting information until we make a better system. Right now,
Yes, I
like
agree.
if you
This
want
is
it,
giving me the fiat power of if I was dictator of the world and I could make it like this.
Yeah.
But I absolutely, we have a friend who's a really good, a top oncologist in a state, and his son is currently in school for oncology, and he's like, I could apprentice him and I could train him in this in 4 years.
100%.
And that is my like rather radical take, which is that
No, it makes a
actually
lot of sense.
you actually would rather have these professionals not in debt, and you would rather have them trained by people who are actively doing that thing and very good at it. However, there's no system for it. So with that caveat, then yes, correct. I agree with you.
And I'm saying, I just say this because there's a lot of industries that will fall into the category of physics, where there is an objective thing you have to learn
Yes.
to be able to participate in the language of the field. Like for physics, for example, I think graduate school for physics is stupid, right? Like totally stupid. And that's why I
A
didn't
lot of
do
really
it.
famous physicists agree with you. So like Elon Musk is famous for that.
All of them.
Yeah.
If you talk to any physicist who's not like totally like
My
delusional,
friend, the one who's from Los Alamos, he's like, yeah, this is not
graduate
they
school
shouldn't be.
graduate school is an abomination, and so is peer review and a bunch of other problems. But like the point I'm making is just that there are areas where there is an objective criterion that you have to learn the language of a field, so to speak.
Yes.
And you hit that point, and then you could become an apprentice. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so going to college for that, I'm just talking undergrad now, is reasonable. The other reasons, though, and I'm going to go back to the point I was making before because I want to list out the reasons why people are going to college.
Yeah, please.
The less objective reasons that become more interesting is, well, a lot of people will go to find a spouse.
Oh, I gotta blow that one out of the water. Do you know how many people meet on college campuses now that meet their spouse?
Not many.
Less than 1%.
Oh, I'm just telling you what they're thinking.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I say this all the time.
Yeah.
People are always that same physicist. He was like, "Hey, can you come speak to this group of moms?" He's really involved in his local community. He's like, because a lot of them think that their daughters have to go to college to meet a husband. I'm like, they're literally not going to meet a husband on college
100%.
campus.
And the thing is, though, the higher echelon of the school you go to, that does change. Actually, it's much more likely.
Maybe slightly, yeah.
No, it's much more because it's smaller.
Do you know the stats on it? Because I don't.
I'll double check that, but I listen. I know at least from personal experience.
I'd
and
like
also
to know
from
the specific school breakdown because that would be very interesting to me.
We can check that. Maybe throw that in the show notes. That'd be really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I can tell you for a fact from the students that I work with, at least it is something that does come up in conversation. They'll do that, and then almost always they'll say it's for the network, which. Again, at a large state school makes 0 sense, and at a very small elite private school, it does happen, right? You know, you do actually meet a lot of friends there. Like it's not that's not a non-existent thing.
Oh, I'm not dismissing that at all. And I think again, like for some people who it's still, again, just because a country club is a good place to meet people does not mean that you should just go out and get a country club membership. It's the same thing as the Ferrari.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of parents are like, well, if I just put my kid into this country club, then their life is going to go great and they're going to get all these things. I'm like, yeah, not necessarily.
And now this is where I'm going to break your frame.
Okay.
Because you keep talking about this in terms of ROI.
Well, for most people
that
in our
is
country,
exactly
they must evaluate it that way because not evaluating it that way is what's put so many people in
right, 100%. And this is where the frame breaks. This is what I'm saying. So there is in America a big chunk of it that looks at college from the frame of, oh, this is an investment. What am I getting out of it? What am I putting into it? Yeah. Right. Okay. There is a equally large chunk of America that looks at college like church.
No, I agree with you. What I'm saying is that a large percentage of that chunk cannot afford to look at it that way.
Oh, yeah.
That's my argument.
Oh, yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
They believe it's just this blind belief that if my child goes and gets into this college and they're going to get a good spouse, they're going to get a good job, they're going to be educated and enlightened, they're going to have a great network of like these people, and it's just not like the branding is very good, and it's because we're multiple generations into college at this point, right? And also because we were talking about this was way earlier. I meant to make this point, but about the professors themselves, a huge reason why the quality of education has declined, like objective education, not college as a whole, but education, college as an educational product, is because you've got generations, like you've got like third generation professors at this point. And what I mean is that these are people who have been taught by people who have been taught by people who have literally never been off of a college campus. And people think STEM is immune to this. They're not. They're not. A little bit. Like the humanities, it's less than 10% have ever had a job outside of academia. For a lot of STEM professors, it's still like, I think it's still like 60% of them.
Never had a job outside of academia.
Never had a job. And if they did,
it's the best ones never do.
Right. And it's later. Like, so if they do have a job outside of academia, it's after they're like 45, they have a PhD, they're consulting, which is a totally different work environment than a lot of these kids are going to be going into.
And that's why they get mad at you though, and they call you anti-intellectual.
No, I know, because it's their church. I understand.
You're
it's
a
like
heretic.
I know that. I'm fully aware. Like, this is again one thing that people always hate. I'm like, college is kind of a cult, you guys. And if you can't see that, it's because you're in it. Like you have to. Like, I'm not saying it's like.
I love this.
I'm not even saying it's a bad cult. Like, I said Joe Rogan. He's like, the Mormons, like, they're kind of a good cult, right? Like, you've heard him say that. It's funny. Like, it's funny. It's a joke. But I'm like, hey, just objectively speaking, like, when you're not allowed to question, and you get shot down, you get called names, and then the disciples come up in the comments, and you'll see him. He's like, oh, this is exactly like I said. I remember I made this video not even a week ago, and I said, hey, I know I'm going to get called anti-intellectual for this, but I didn't say anything that wasn't just objectively true, verifiably true via statistics. And this is anti-intellectualism, and they're all in the comments, and they're all in college, and they're all going to get out and not be able to get a job, and they're going to realize that what I'm saying is true, but they can't see it because they're so steeped in it. And it's like, and also I feel like that's a huge red flag for if you cannot objectively evaluate what I'm saying, then you're proving to me that education itself has failed. Like, you're proving to me that college is not education because you don't have the basic syllogism the basic logic, the critical thinking skills that you claim that I lack in order to see that what I'm saying has some merit. And you should be able, and the funniest thing I get is people that'll say like, oh, well, where did you get your credentials? And I'm like, what paper would you like me to buy in order to be able to objectively evaluate what I'm saying, which you should be able to do if you're educated. And this is why, like, it's so important to separate college and education and career training. These things are all divorced. They're not one, this is not Frankenstein's monster here. Like, we have to separate these things and then talk about them all in their different verticals because that's what educated people do.
Hands down.
And
it's so funny you're saying this because, I get the same kind of critiques all the time. I'll get people in my comments being like, so what college do you go to? Right? As if I can't know how the Ivy League admissions process works without having attended one of these colleges. As if there's like a class that says College Admissions 101, and there's a degree that is College Admissions Advisor, and that I should have gone and studied that. And, oh, well, you didn't work in an admissions office. And I'm like, yeah, and my results are better than them. So like, what do you mean? Like, you're listening to me for all these hours. You know that I know how this stuff works. So maybe you can have your own judgment on that. Right. It's really funny. But okay, I want to go back to this though, because a little bit, just because I want to unpack the other side of the view on this, because I think a lot of people are going to listen to us talking about this, and we're talking a lot about ROI. We're talking a lot about like the math of this, that the math makes no sense.
Let's just talk about the feelings then.
Well, the feelings matter. Right.
Absolutely.
So what do you do with a student who, let's take an extreme example, because this is kind of interesting. They're growing up, let's say, in New York City, right? Which is about as far opposite of the America that we were talking about originally as you can go. Okay. And they're, the way that people look at you is in a large part, mediated by the college you went to, at least until you achieve some pretty big success in your career. All their friends are pressuring them. All their friends they're coming to school. They have a shirt day, right? Where they have supposed to wear like the shirt of the college you got into. Okay. And now you have a kid who is a bright kid, could totally have gone to one of these schools, and they're doing the math. They don't know what to do. They feel left out. what do you say to that kind of a kid?
You say the same, and this is where it's like, this is the hardest thing in the world. But and this is where I think too, this is the exact advice I gave this mom, where I told her, I said, no matter what you choose to do about this, whether you choose to fill out that FAFSA because she didn't want to do it, and I said, her daughter's going to get, she's going to get she's going to get a $5,000 loan and then a $6,500 loan for sophomore year, or they're just going to pay full tuition, even though she doesn't feel good about it. I said, whether you tell her no, that you're not gonna fill out the aid paperwork and you don't enable her to go, or whether you do, you're just not gonna feel good about the choice, like as a parent. A lot of that reason is because if your child's not fully informed about why they're going, they don't have a clear goal. Because in my mind, even if you do have the money, I think and that's really the thing, is you do or don't have the money. Because while it is an emotional decision, technically all purchase decisions we make are emotional, right? Humans are not logical about their purchase decisions. And so it's fine if it's an emotional purchase, like choices for people's weddings, right? Those are emotional purchases, right?
Extremely.
And also very high dollar. So it's a good comparison. But I think that parents
why don't we dive into that? I like that. You know how much the average wedding costs today in America?
I know it's a lot. My sister-in-law is getting married right now, and it's looking like a 6-figure wedding, which is wild because anyway, I have my own opinions about people getting married. My own wedding was not. I bought my wedding dress for $100 off of somebody on
God
Craigslist.
I love it.
And then, but anyway, that's a total aside. That has nothing to do with anything.
Well, no, because the reason I'm saying is because it's getting out of control. I think because
people are getting married later. And so I think that's why it has to be more of a show. Like when you get married, when you're like really young, nobody expects it to be fancy. My youngest sister was a structural welder, and her husband's also a welder. Very cool, my sister, and
I love it.
She built rocket launch pads. Like literally, I'm such a big fan of my sister. She's the coolest. And I recruited her to work for me because she's so good at finding opportunities. She didn't go into a union. She got paid work. Anyway, doesn't matter. Very cool though. But they got married real young. Awesome. 23. And so
that's great.
Yeah, and they own a house now, which is really cool. But 23, and they didn't have a big lavish, because you're just young. Like nobody expects you to have a wedding. But I think you get a little bit further away from that, and you get married a little bit older, like in your late 20s or early 30s, and it's like, the expectation of cost, I think, goes up, and the type of the event and the size of the event goes up. 100%. And so I think that's increasing the cost of weddings.
And I think also like people are feeling a lot of pressure because of social media, right? Because you'll go and you'll see like all these.
College.
That's what I was going to bring up, right? Because I think it's a lot of the same pressures. Because one of the biggest trends on TikTok every single year, like clockwork, it's always the same song, by the way, anything could happen. And it's like these kids like opening up their stations, like they're losing their mind, like, oh, I got to Harvard, like whatever. And so like I think the people watching that on the other end are like, well, wait a second, like I have so many things that are like maybe not right in my life. I can fix that by getting into Harvard.
Right. But you see how that's like, it's the same as everything else. It's the same as a nice car. It's the same as a nice house. It's the same as plastic surgery. It's the same as cosmetic products. It's the same thing. It's just sales, right? Fear of loss, hope of gain. 100%. And so that's why I think for parents, that's why it's really important. That's why I talk about ROI so much, is because I think that people are more going into the church, as you said.
Yeah.
And so they just think, well, it's okay because it's college. And that's what they do. And they just say, oh, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Have you ever had someone tell you that it's good debt?
I have not had anyone tell me that, because if someone ever told me that, I would smack that down real quick.
Oh my, no,
there is no good debt.
I'm never gonna forget. Oh my God. Okay, so I'll tell you the story. This is a funny story.
That was very Dave Ramsey of me, but there is no good debt. I don't subscribe to that.
I was sitting. I was at my friend's kitchen table. I think it was my first year of college. This friend of mine from high school, and his little sister had just gotten into Northeastern, of all places, which is a mid school, not a great school, but it's good. I've criticized them a lot. I don't know if Northeastern and I have some beef because like they do a lot of false marketing.
Well, I mean, they're a college, so yeah.
Well, no, but even by college standards, it's pretty bad.
Wow.
Yeah, they lie about their acceptance rate. They lie about like a job outcomes.
Do you talk about knowledge rates ever? Like about the knowledge rates?
No, what's that?
So it's like it's the way that sorry, this is a total aside. Finish your story and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, long story short, okay, the sister got into college, and they gave her some financial aid, but she's still going to have to take out $120,000 in loans by the time she graduates for a neuroscience degree to then go pre-med. Okay.
Ooh.
And I remember like listening to their family have this conversation, and like this was like a middle class-ish family. Like the dad was like a CFA, the mom like worked in an accounting office, and so they were supposedly like on paper financially literate people. Okay, all right. So then like I'm listening to them have this conversation, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is a great deal. $120,000 in debt. It's not bad." And I'm like, I'm just looking at the mom. I'm just like, doesn't she want to go to medical school? She's like, yeah. So it's not 120,000. She's like, no, it's 120,000. I'm like, no, because you take the debt, and it keeps growing.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't like stop growing because you're in medical school. They don't care. It just gets bigger, right, the whole time, and it compounds. So it gets bigger faster, right? So, and she's going to medical school too, which at the time even was like $400,000 minimum, right? And so you're really, what you're saying is she's going to graduate, if she actually does graduate from med school, which was not guaranteed to begin
also
with.
if she even gets in.
If she even gets into med school, and there might be time between when she graduates from college and if she even goes to med school. Okay, so all the ifs.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, she's ending up with around $600,000 of debt that she'll have to pay off on, at first, a $50,000 a year salary that will go to maybe $250,000 if she's lucky by the time she's like 32.
Yeah.
You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. And I told her, I just laid out the math the way I just did it for you.
Yeah.
Which it's really obvious math if you're like literate.
But we do this for a living, so that's why we know.
And she turned to me and she says, at the time I was just 18. You don't need a degree.
I agree.
It was like compound interest. Like I just pull a napkin out. I'm just like, okay, this is not rocket science. You can do this. Anybody can do this at home. I swear. Yeah. Okay, put it in Chat GPT. Well, they're not great at math. All right, back to this. Okay, so I explained this all to her, and she turns to me and she says, "But it was good debt. It's good debt though. It's good debt. It's not bad debt. It's good debt. It's college debt. College debt's good debt. Okay, bad debt's credit cards, but college debt is good debt."
Oh.
And I'm just like, oh, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
I'm gonna be honest. That makes me like physically ill. I have a really good friend who's a doctor, and she runs a pretty successful like direct primary care practice in Texas. Right. And one of the things that she and I have talked about at length that I think is really important, and because I talk to parents all over the country whose kids are, and that is a classic case of did well in high school,
right?
Interested in science,
right?
I'm gonna go be a neuroscientist. There
you go.
And it's like so let's say that goes badly. If it goes badly, she's not going to be a neuroscientist. She's not going to be. She's not going to be a doctor. She's going to have a ton of debt.
Go badly, by the way.
Right, and then also now she's going to have a ton of debt.
Yep.
And let's say that young lady has not thought through what she wants out of her life.
Yep.
Heaven forbid she wants to have a family and be home. She cannot. That door is closed before she ever gets the option.
She has to work.
Right. Now let's say she does go to medical school and she does get in, and this is something my doctor friend and I have talked about a lot because she's 42 now. She's 42 and she's not been able to have children because, and this is something I care about very much because no one talks about this. And this is what she said, that she's like, she's told me before, she's like, I want you to talk about this because the toll of residency and the lack of sleep means that female physicians have a very difficult time often having children if they want to have their own children.
Well, and they're older too.
Which compounds the problem. Yeah. And so she said like, it's something that she wished somebody had talked to her about when she was graduating high school, because she said if someone had talked me through like, hey, what do you want your life to look like in the future?
Right.
She loves children.
I know.
And it has robbed her of that, but she made that decision and went on that path much earlier. Right. And then by the time she had already gone through undergrad, the debt was going to force her to then continue or else.
100%.
Right. Or your other option is to like find some other high earning career. But now the only things that are going to give you that are going to be like software engineering or sales or something like that. That's really highly competitive, which is fine, but it just narrows your options a lot. And so this is why I'm talking about with the emotional side of it. Like just because your daughter's interested in veterinary science or your son's interested in that one, I get a lot like, oh, she wants to be a vet. I'm like, yeah, vet tech. We're going vet tech first. And then we're going to see if we actually like that work environment. and then you're going to decide if you want to do that, right? Because a lot of people talk about the risk of like going into careers that are trade-based careers. It's, oh, it's going to break down your body, blah blah blah. But they don't talk about the risk of going into those like more prestige fields like
Right.
medicine. Some of the people with the highest suicide rate, veterinarians and dentists.
Yeah.
People
And
do not talk about that at all.
They don't talk about the fact that like a very large chunk of lawyers are alcoholics too.
Yeah, well, it's because
Yeah.
it's so stressful. Like,
Right.
and that's why I'm like, and especially, and the stress, like the stress. This is why, like, there are some people who are supposed to do that. Like,
Yeah.
and when I talk about young women, I don't want people to say like, I'm not saying young women shouldn't go into specific careers. I'm saying that if they do, they should be fully informed about the trade-offs that are
Yep.
likely to happen if they do that. And also for young men, this is the same thing. Like, if young men want to go into fields that have those same risks, like they're going to travel, they're going to be away from home. Like, all of these things are also true for them. You know, if you go into an industry or a job where your primary goal, your primary need is to like live in your hometown, but you go and you get a degree that is going to force you to take a certain job to pay it off, and then you have to live in a different location, your life is going to not be the way that you want it to be, and that is not successful in my view.
Yep.
And so that's why, like, when people are saying, oh, my kid's like so excited, they blah 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 want to do these things, I'm like, the most loving thing to do, in my opinion, it's a very strong word to use, is to make sure that they go in eyes wide open, because it doesn't matter where they're going to school or if they're not. They have
Right.
to understand, like, if you make these decisions now, and it's so hard because their brains aren't fully formed, right? They don't understand the cost, they don't understand the years that they're signing up for. But I just am very passionate about doors not being closed on people before they've realized that they want
Yeah.
to open them as much as possible.
100%.
Yeah.
And because I think people don't understand the cost of reducing your optionality, right?
Well, because it's so far in the future, it's
Right.
difficult to bring it forward, especially to young adults, like especially to like teenagers.
It's impossible.
Near impossible.
Near impossible. Like it is a tiny chunk of like 17 to 18-year-olds
Yeah.
who can look that far ahead. Now, their parents could, but I think their parents have been indoctrinated for a very long time. I think we've been indoctrinated to treat 18-year-olds like adults.
Yeah, but we don't prep them like adults is the problem. So
Even if you prep them, it doesn't matter. They're not.
right, their brains are not
They're
formed.
letting 18-year-olds vote, I think, was probably one of the biggest mistakes of the Vietnam era.
I agree.
And it really makes zero sense whatsoever. And I say this because I remember how I was at 18, and without tooting my horn here, realistically, like intellectually speaking, I was probably top 0.1% of 18-year-olds,
Oh.
and I was stupid.
Well,
Okay.
I was about to say I was an idiot.
I was stupid.
I was not where you were intellectually,
I
and
was
I was
stupid.
also an
And I'm
idiot.
going to tell you, I was a dumbass. Okay, nobody should have listened to my opinion on goddamn anything.
Right.
Okay, and
Right.
that would have been very appropriate.
Yeah.
And frankly, my opinion should have been discounted for a long time after I was 18 too. I
Yes.
didn't stop being stupid. I'm not even sure I've stopped yet. Okay. If you listen to my comments on social media, a lot of people think I'm still stupid today. Okay. So like
Yeah.
that hasn't changed.
We're just gonna hope that our work and our results are speaking for themselves in this. I agree with you though.
I'm just saying though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, you're letting them make these kinds of decisions about themselves.
Yes.
That in any normal, healthy society, we would never allow them to make.
Right.
Never in a million years. Never in a million years would you say and by the way, America didn't used to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to like pre-World War II, especially, people lived at home for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You were not told at 18, go find your own apartment.
Yeah.
Which was ludicrous.
Yeah.
But it still is ludicrous. They're not ready for that. They don't know what to do. They don't know anything. And I get upset at the parents that do this, and the parents who say, "Oh, well, I'm going to let my kid really, drive the show. I'm just here to support them," right? And they think they're being kind, right? They're doing like a gentle parenting kind of thing, which is in part valuable, right? You don't want to force your kid into a certain field, but a little bit, a little bit. Do you see that lady? I forget her name right
Ruth
now.
Hahn.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I know who you're
I
talking
love how you know who I'm talking about already.
Well, I think she's very wise. I think
Right.
that though she was a great example of, she was a fantastic example of limited vocational creativity.
Yeah.
Because she's a
Sorry.
licensed clinical social worker.
Right, for reference, this is the lady. She's a social worker, I think you said, right?
Yes.
Who said that she only let her kids pick up to through 4 different majors, right?
Yes, and she has 3 children, and she had one go into accounting, one go into nursing, and one go into software engineering. Now, here's the thing about this. I actually talked about this because like I said, I think she's a very wise woman overall. I listen to a lot of what she says because I think she's very wise. However, I do think, and I see this a lot with parents who come into our program. So we basically get parents who are, a lot of times we get parents who are like highly credentialed. And what I
Right.
mean by that is they do have legally required degrees, CPAs. I had a young lady in our program who both of her parents were surgeons,
Awesome.
right? And they just go, I don't know any jobs. Like, I don't know any jobs. When I was a kid, the parents saying this, that
Yeah.
I only knew doctor, lawyer, engineer. My husband and Ruth Han, and this is like, I hope I can say this, but my husband is Japanese Hawaiian. He's Asian, and Asian households are like this. They give
Yeah.
them very few options.
Right.
I think her logic tracks as far as like her philosophy on that is that anything that has to do with death or taxes is always a secure career to go into, which I don't necessarily disagree with. What I do disagree with is the fact that she made them go to college, and she did make them go to college, and she made them go into college for one of those things, but she did not figure out like what they needed from their life first. And so a great example of that is like and her kids are young, so we'll see how this plays out, right? But her software engineer, we don't need to go to college for software engineering. It's silly. Like,
I disagree with that.
you don't think so?
Well,
I mean,
so
63% of the vast majority
yeah.
of developers have degrees in things that are completely unrelated.
Well, no, let me elaborate on why I disagree with that.
Okay.
And I think this is a distinction I was drawing near the beginning of our conversation. I kind of want to go deeper into this. I think there's a more nuanced like point here, which is that there's a lot of degrees that you don't need, but that can be efficient, right? My little brother, for example, he's about to graduate in a few weeks. Got a degree, in computer science. He's graduating with honors. He got hired by Amazon to be a software engineer. He's very happy with all of that.
Sure.
He learned, I want to say, about half of the stuff he needs for what he's doing from the computer science degree.
Mm-hmm.
The other half was totally useless.
Yeah.
And, the other stuff he needed to learn, he learned because he was working for my software company.
Right.
On the job, right? And it was a blessing, huge blessing that he had the chance to do that because I happened to be starting a startup at the same time that he was like studying that exact thing in college, right? And so he got like crazy internship experience that nobody gets at his age. Sure. And not coincidentally, Amazon noticed and hired him, right? They're stealing him from me, okay? Thanks, Jeff Bezos. Okay, good job. Okay, but anyway, I'm gonna get him back eventually. Yeah. But all this is to say, he would have had a very inefficient time for a lot of people. And that kind of, the kind of self-discipline it would have taken to learn that stuff outside of a college setting is unlikely, I think, for the vast majority of people who would be successful in those careers. Now, and there are people who can do it. I'm not saying there aren't, okay? And I know a lot of those people. I respect them. I'm friends with a lot of them. One of my best friends from college, for example, studied physics. He ended up being a software engineer. A lot of people in physics do that. It's very normal. Because we're doing a lot of coding anyway, and we're taking a lot of computer science classes. But you do, but that's
linear thinking.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Rose Hahn, though. So I take, my position on this is a lot closer. Like, have you ever read Scott Adams' book, How to Fail at Almost Everything But Still Win Big?
No.
Oh my God. I'm going to gift you a copy before you leave here today.
Thank you.
It's phenomenal. That book changed my whole life.
Okay.
If there's one book that I'm most likely to give as a gift to my clients, it's that one. And it's a book about life strategy. And one of the things that Scott Adams talks about is skill stacks.
Yeah,
and talent
part of our
stacking.
process is skill stack analysis,
Yes.
which is what do you need, what do you currently have, how does that apply? It's in our process.
Precisely.
Yes.
And there are some college degrees that can give you a skill.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that.
And so if you look at it from that perspective, right, it's not that like you're locked into that particular profession just because you studied that in college, right? Even for Rose Hahn's kids, like if you look at the degrees they're getting, those are foundations from which those kids, if they want to take a risk after they do that, sure. Go take a risk.
Well, hard to evaluate because two of them are legally required degrees, though. You see that, right? Like one of them got a nursing license and the other one
Why does that make it hard to evaluate?
Because it's not the skill stack. It's the only reason those degrees are valuable is because it leads to, valuable in the marketplace for employment, is because it leads to a legally required license.
Well, it's also because it teaches them stuff that they actually have to use on the job.
For the most part.
Yeah, a nursing degree teaches you how to be a nurse.
Well, I don't know. If you talk to a lot of nurses, they'll tell you that they don't learn anything until they really get on the floor. There's very little. Yeah. A lot of it they are going to learn in their, before, right? They're gonna learn a lot of it in that little bit of hands-on training they get before they get on the floor.
Get out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Same thing for
sorry,
accountants,
did they
actually.
not use any of the background on that? I mean, like, I don't understand. I
I
mean,
mean, I think some of it they probably do, like basic anatomy and stuff, but like but a lot of that they're gonna learn, like it's gonna be experience based. And how do I know that? Because they used to train it. They used to train it, right? So it's like the degree is completely superfluous because it's been a skill set that was trained before. It's kind of like
right.
law. Like reading the law is still something you can do in a few states. And
Hmm.
when people, it's so wild to me when people don't know, like lawyers themselves are like, you can't do it without a law degree. I'm like,
You
how do you
totally
not know the
can.
history of your own profession? The
Yeah.
ABA didn't exist until 1912.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, so many, again, and also look at how our country's gotten since all
Well,
of our lawyers have been college
the
educated.
ABA is being disbanded in a few states
I
now.
do. And
It's
I
really cool. I
also,
love that.
people should also watch for the accounting. This is why I think Ruth Hans is so interesting because one of her kids is an accountant. But the CPA exam, you're going to see this across our country. This is going to happen with law. This is going to happen with medicine. It's going to happen with nurses. That's why I have a lot of hope for these professions, actually, because the logical conclusion of all of this is going to be that people realize what I've just said, which is that degrees are not necessary for most of the jobs that we currently require them for. So accountants are a great example that can absolutely be trained. Like you do not need an accounting degree to become a CPA. And how do I know that? Because in a lot of different states now, they're removing the master's degree, that extra credit requirement for
Awesome.
CPA licenses. Also because there's a shortage because people are just not going into CPA work because of the brain drain. People are going into tech. Why are they going into tech? Because it doesn't require them to get a college degree to go into tech and earn high.
Yeah.
Same thing's happening in healthcare. And so they're also having to reduce. Healthcare is actually the industry that's dropping degree requirements the fastest. So there's that. But, and I forgot the point I was going to make because we were talking about the, shoot, I forgot. I lost my point.
I think we were talking about like nurses and if they learned stuff before that.
Yeah.
Rose Hahn.
Soft-
Skill stacks.
Skill stacks. Ah, no, I lost it. It'll come back
Okay.
to me later,
All
I'm
right.
sure.
Well, I'm going to go back to what I was saying about the skill stacks then, but because like what I find that's really useful sometimes about the efficiency of college degrees is that, you know, the advice I give a lot of the time to my students if they're unsure, this is the same thing I did, by the way. Like part of the reason, most of the reason, in fact, why I studied physics was because I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I told myself, let me go study the hardest possible thing I can think of. And that was physics and math. And so my goal was, I'm going to go train myself on the most difficult intellectual thing I can possibly manage. And then let that transform me. And then afterwards, I'm going to see what the world looks like and I'm going to figure it out. And I just sort of bounced around. And, you know, I was doing a lot of advising work. By the way, I actually started this company when I was 18.
Oh, sure.
I started advising students when I was in my first year of college and lasted all the way since then. And so it became more formal as I got older and stuff. And I eventually like went, you know, all in on this after I graduated from college. But there was a period where I almost went to law school. You know that?
Sure, there's a period where everybody almost goes to law school.
I got into 8 law schools with full scholarships.
Sure.
And I turned them all down because it wasn't cheap enough.
Well, do you see how too that's like it's so funny because if you had gone, they would have taken credit for your success. But
Oh,
your
of course.
success was because of the way you came in, not the way you go out.
No, you know what?
I remembered my point that I'm
scared the
going to make.
crap
So
out of me.
after we talk about that.
Well, I mean, I'll just wrap this up quick then, because like the reason why I ended up not going, and no disrespect to lawyers here, God bless you guys. I don't know how you do what you do. Is a special kind of person who can be a lawyer, and sure as hell's not me.
I agree.
Okay. I went and I shadowed a lawyer because I was going to be an intellectual property attorney. I passed the patent bar. I did a bunch of other stuff.
Interesting.
I'm good at reading and understanding stuff. I'm really good at taking tests. So I took a lot of tests. I passed a bunch of tests. I took a bunch of other things too. I also passed an actuarial exam. I
I had a kid studying for that. He was, but without going to college, because did you know that that's actually just an
not a
actuarial
requirement.
fellowship? It's not.
Yeah.
And he was Mensa.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
left college because he didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so he came in and he's like, I have no idea what to
You
do.
could be an
I'm
actuary.
like, buddy, you can be an actuary. And you
Yeah.
probably should, because I've seen like what you can do. It's
pretty cool.
And he's like, wait, can you do that with that? I was like, heck yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And then we built him a curriculum.
I love that.
Great example of like how, that's a great example of like, he didn't need college, like college needed him, because they were just going to white label whatever he did.
I
Like,
love that.
yeah. But I actually did know that because we've done that
It's
before.
awesome. Yeah. But the thing is, I shadowed that intellectual property attorney for a few days, and I got so scared. I never wanted to come back. Yeah.
Scared of what?
Oh, I was scared of living like that.
Yeah, that's miserable.
Well, that's the thing, because he was working. He was
Hours.
he
Yeah,
was I
miserable
think
hours.
in his 50s. He had just become a partner at the firm, and so late 50s now, where he finally got his first equity in a company, right? And that was my first question to him, by the way. And like I remember, I have a friend of the family who is very, very high up in legal for BlackRock.
Oh, cool.
And so at the time I was thinking about law school, I went and asked him for advice. And I'm like, hey, so like, when do I get equity in these law firms?
Oh, and he
And
was like, not
no, he
for.
started laughing at me. He started like laughing over the phone. Like, what do you mean you get equity? Equity. I'm like, yeah, equity. Like I want a piece of the company. What do you
Yeah.
mean? Like, how am I gonna get rich? He's like, what? Like, he's like, no.
No, no, no.
He's like, let me explain how this works. You're gonna work 80 hours a week for the entire time between your 20s and then probably at least up to your 40s. And then
Yeah.
by the time you're in your 40s, you can dial it back to like 60-ish,
Yeah.
right? And then that's where you're gonna cruise until you retire. And then if you get equity, it's really a function of your ability to navigate luck and politics, and maybe, but probably not, because the structure of the firm might not even allow by the time you get there.
This is part of the reason I think that a lot of people, this prize that people think if getting their kids into these banking law, they think it's this prize. I'm like, it's actually hell for a lot of people. That's
Oh, yeah.
why it's so important to figure out what they
Yeah.
need and what their definition of
Yep.
success is before they get to that point.
Yes.
Because it will lock them into that and they will be trapped. And that's what's like, that's what I,
Well, I don't. I'm with you on the lock-in if they have the debt.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm not talking about people that
we're
with
on
no
the same.
debt. And
Yeah.
actually, what I want to talk about was
Yeah,
your
please tell
brother,
me.
because now I've learned a lot in this conversation about it's been really interesting to talk to you because like you're very knowledgeable about all of this, and it's the side that like I don't really know anything about too much because it's just not relevant to the problem I solve.
Right.
Now your brother, how old is your brother?
He's 22.
He's 22. So what we do is we place. And so one of the one side to my business that is really interesting about this is the admissions part. The admissions part, not an expert at. What I am an expert at is, and my team are experts at, is placing. So the 18, 19, 20-year-old, and then also 21, 22, 23, we have a lot of information on that.
Yeah.
We actually do not work with college graduates. The reason we don't work with college graduates is because they are impossible to place. The only reason he got hired by Amazon was because he had hands-on, it's because he had experience. They will not touch these computer science graduates. Like it's not because of his college degree. It's because he had work experience working for you. And I say that because what we do is the recruiting side, which is we go out and find opportunities. Like a lot of what we do is like, ATS optimization, resume, interview prep, like portfolio building. And I'm telling you right now, it's these kids are coming off these college campuses and the stacks that they're learning in computer science are not relevant, especially with the AI tools. They're spending more time on college campuses catching them using AI, using ridiculously poorly engineered tools to catch them using AI than they are equipping them to use the tools. And that's just the AI side of it. But what I'm telling you is like it's directly a result. Like your brother should be thanking you so much.
Oh, he does. Yeah,
but we've had like
you remember that, Nicola? Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, he should be thanking you so much. It's the only reason he got hired was because of that. It has nothing to do with his degree. And it to the point where it's like a contraindication of work. Basically what's happening is, and this is intelligent.com. So they surveyed 1,000 hiring managers, all of which, by the way, had bachelor's degrees at least themselves. So that removes the bias. It's not like they're degree free, so they didn't have a bias here. And they have admitted that they are avoiding hiring recent grads. And a lot of it has to do with just a complete lack of preparation for the workforce. They have inflated salary expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say that, I know people get so mad at me. People get so mad at me about this livable wage. Guess what? The livable wage, the market value wage for the entry-level work was the same before your kid went to college, and it's the same after they graduate. And what's going to happen and what is happening is these poor grads, and I do actually have a lot of compassion for them because they've been told their whole lives the goal is college. This is the North Star. You get to college, you're going to be fine. They get in, the work sucks because it's entry-level work, and it does suck. And then they're not getting paid what they were told in college because college creates something called the reality gap, which is the expectations of earnings for what college grads think they'll get because they went to college. And again, remember earlier I talked about the journalists being the worst. They think they're going to make $100,000. They make like 30.
If they're lucky.
If they're even employed. Computer science has the smallest gap, but they're still off by about 10 grand, which is not a small amount of money. So it's just the fact that these kids are being sent into a market where they don't have the skills and to command the wage that they need to pay off their loans. They're going to get off campus, this carefully engineered bubble where it's engineered to keep them buying degrees. Like, stay here. It's nice here, right? Had freedom. They had flexible schedule. They were able to go do whatever. Now they have to go into an office 9 to 5, sometimes more than that. They have to take $40,000, right? That's the median. If they're employed, 52% of college grads are unemployed, even up to like 5 years after graduation. Many are underemployed up until 10 years after graduation. But then they get out and then they leave because
Yeah.
the majority of employers in our country are not these big firms. It's not BlackRock. The
No.
majority of employers are small to medium-sized businesses. 80% of the jobs are small to
Right.
medium-sized businesses.
And they don't even care where you went to college.
And they don't care if you went to college. They don't care if you went.
Yeah.
They do not care. And so these kids are just going out into the market completely under-equipped,
Yep.
and then they're going to cost these businesses a ton of money. And
Yeah.
so you get burned by hiring that demographic enough. That is why grads are in such a poor position right now. It's been the last couple years of the survey where the employers were like, yeah, we had to fire 71% of them had to fire a recent grad.
Oh,
That you stop hiring.
I've had to fire. I can't tell you this. So I own a tutoring company as well,
Right.
separate from the advising that I do. I've had to fire about 3 times as many people as I currently employ.
Oof.
In no small part because, and mind you, these are kids.
Misalignment of expectations.
No, they're just like literally incompetent. Just like they don't have basic workplace competency.
That's the thing. That's the number
these
one
are
thing.
kids who are at these top colleges, mind you. These are my tutors. Usually, they're college students or graduate students at elite universities for the most part.
Yeah.
They don't understand, for example, like, hey, when you book an appointment with a client,
You have to show up.
you have to be there. You have to be there. And if you're not going to be there, you have to let everybody know in advance. And ideally, don't do that. All right. And if your friends are going on spring break, but you agreed to work, you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And what?
Like you can never say that. But
it's such a bizarre conversations I've had with former employees.
It's like taking somebody right out of high school. And this
Yeah.
is why I'm like, we call it college crystallization. And basically what it is you go to college, and even if you are working part of the time,
Yeah.
it's still this false, you're borrowing from your future earnings. You're borrowing from your future self. And the lifestyle that you live while you're in college, even if you are a broke college student, is still the type of lifestyle you'll have when you're retired. So you've pulled that forward. You're like, oh, I have all this time. Well, I can just go do whatever. Like, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of fun, like most of the time.
Yeah.
But it's fake. And so it's very difficult for them to readjust into actual work. And I really do feel like we're doing a massive disservice because people say, oh, well, it's their fault. They're adults. I'm like, kind of, but you kind of ruined
No, it's not their fault at all.
their attitude right out of the gate.
This is what I'm saying because they're not actually adults. This is the problem.
I agree with you.
They're not adults.
If you talk to them, you're like, they have no experience. They have no life
If you've
experience. They
met
don't
an
know anything yet.
18-year-old,
Yeah.
you know for a fact they are not an adult.
Yeah.
We can all, like, as actual adults, we
Maybe
can...
they're adults, but they're not mature adults. Like they're young adults.
They're large kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, that's why, for example, like, look, I can go for a lot of examples of this. I don't want to get off topic. They are not adults, and they're not equipped to make this kind of decision.
I
and
agree.
the problem is, going back to the salary alignment expectations that you're making, that I think is a direct consequence of the debt. Because
No, I know it is
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they can't afford to take an entry level salary. And I'm like,
Exactly.
And actually, the most heartbreaking, and I tell this story all the time because
Right.
I will never forget this. I had this young man on my podcast. His name is Bradley on a budget. He's a TikTok creator, prolific TikTok creator, and he was so kind to come on my podcast. He at 17, and this is like the most tragic, and we were kind of talking about this earlier with the creatives and the artists.
Yeah.
Like they, I think, get the rawest deal out of this.
hands down.
Like by far, because if your child is creative or artistic, the worst place in the world for them is college, because either they will feel like they have to make whatever that was into a career and they will resent it or hate it, or worse, they will not be able to afford to do it at all. And both of those are travesties. I think that is the saddest thing, and that is exactly what happened. Like I might even cry telling the story because it still just breaks my heart for him. He came on my podcast, and at 17 or 18 years old, parents were not very financially literate, and his guidance counselor said, oh, you want to go to culinary school? He's Italian. His grandmother, his nana, a fantastic like cook, great cook, all the love in the world, like just, and it was his whole childhood. And he tells a story about how like she just implanted this love in him, and he wanted to do that as a career. And he's from New Jersey. And so his parents were like, oh, yeah, well, you go to college then. And his guidance counselor said, yeah, you got to go to the Culinary Institute of America. And I will name drop this college because I hope bad things happen to them. I hope this college closes because of what they did. And he said that he actually graduated in 4 years, which is very uncommon. Most young adults will take 5.5 years to graduate, the vast majority, if they graduate at all. So it's not a 4-year program. It's never a 4-year degree. It's a 5.5-year degree.
For a culinary institute, you mean?
No, just for college in general.
Really?
Yeah, the average is 5.5 years. That's why I laugh when they're trying to fix the college problem right now with a 3-year degree. And I'm like, So it's a 4.5 year degree.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Like only an academic could come up with a solution that idiotic, to be perfectly honest. They had a mastermind where they came up with that solution. And I was like, you don't fulfill the promised time now. And you've designed your programs that way. Where
That's
4 year colleges,
crazy.
my husband went to a 4 year, like 4 year university. It was
Yeah.
impossible to graduate in 4 years. You
That's
could not, like the way that it
insane.
was structured, even you could not do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but anyway, so Bradley, so he goes to the Culinary Institute of America. He graduates in 4 years, which is impressive. Most people do not. And then he said that he went into the bursar's office and he was sitting there when they told him how much his payment was going to be, and he and I will never forget this. I'll tell the story till the cows come home. And he said that he was sitting at his graduation ceremony and he said that he wished he could just die because of the amount of debt he was going to be in. And he's like, I have no idea how I'm going to pay this off. He's like it would be easier if I was dead. That's what he said. And I was just, it just shattered my heart into pieces. And he then tried to make it as a pastry chef, but he couldn't afford to take entry-level roles because of his debt. He was unable to pursue this love that he had because of his college degree. It robbed him of the ability to go into that. And that to me is the saddest thing in the entire world. And not only that, but the worst part was he told me that he doesn't bake, he doesn't cook anything, because he's like, it just robbed me of that. And it made me so bitter about this thing that he should have been able to do. But if he had just gone to New York, and if he had just
Just go
worked
work
in a kitchen, and it's like,
Yeah.
and that is the thing but that's happening to a ton of kids. That happens to so many kids. And that is the thing that I'm like, that's why I talk about this so much. Cause like a lot of people, I hear these stories, like I get these emails, I get these stories, I get like, then I tell my husband, sometimes this keeps me awake, but like these people that go, oh, I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist, but now I want to be home with my kids and now I can't. Like I have to make $180,000 a year to pay off my debt. Like, what can I do? And I'm like, don't go to college. Don't go to college.
This is the part that kills me. You'll notice, and I took a lot of heat for naming this podcast "Go Ivy or Go Free," but the reason I did that is because I firmly believe that most of this kind of debt is just a modern form of slavery.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And I hear stories like that, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I almost fell into that trap myself. Where I could have gone $300,000 into debt for a physics degree.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, when I graduated from college, at one point I was an unpaid intern for a while.
Yeah.
Right. But I had the luxury of being an unpaid intern and exploring all these different things that ended up leading to the career I have today, where I'm, wildly successful, way beyond anything I ever thought I was going to be. Yeah. As a direct consequence of the freedom to explore in my early 20s, which I was only free to do because I didn't have the debt.
Yes.
That's the only reason I was able to do it. And I can't tell you how many phenomenally successful people you'll meet in this world who have the same exact story where they're not trapped in. And that freedom to explore is worth more than any credential, because that's the actual scarce thing.
Yes.
That's
the time.
That's
and that's
crazy.
what we were talking about at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
It's the time. People are not realizing the risk of locking your child on a college campus for 4 to 6 years at the beginning of their life, because that is not the right way to start, because they're going to come out of college. And I've seen this a lot. They come out of college and then they feel like there's all this pressure on them.
Yeah.
And of course there is. They just burnt half a decade. If you're lucky, they just burnt half a decade and $100,000 minimum. Like the actual cost right now is $108,000 to $156,000 on average for a bachelor's degree. All in costs is over $500,000, like tuition, interest, lost wages. That's why too, you've probably heard people, oh, college graduates make over $1 million more a year, right? You've heard that probably. It's a Georgetown study from 2012 that has been wildly debunked. Even College Board now will admit that it's not $1 million. But if you actually do the math, like if you account for the higher tax bracket, the lost wages, the interest, the actual college premium is about $120,000.
Yeah.
It's not worth
it's
it.
Also not the same premium. And again, this is why I always advocate for a barbell strategy. Well, that's what I was going to say.
Because of what people are buying.
The premium you get depends on where you went to college. Not all colleges are giving you the same kind of education. Mm-hmm. The brand of the school definitely matters in terms of the value in the marketplace. And the thing you're studying there really matters.
Yes, it does.
If you're graduating, let's say, here's a great example. Probably one of my favorite universities in the whole country is Georgia Tech. Right? Georgia Tech has the best, by far, ROI of any college in America.
Wow.
It's not even close. Like
I
if
know
you,
a lot of people went to
yeah,
Georgia Tech. I
yeah.
graduated high school in Savannah.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I know
Okay,
a ton
yeah.
of
So a
people
lot
went
of
to
your friends.
Georgia
Okay,
Tech.
that's great. So yeah, so Georgia Tech. If you look at a graph, the Wall Street Journal had a really, no, it was Bloomberg actually. I think had a really cool graphic of this where they mapped out all the colleges by ROI,
Hmm.
and so and you
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it.
right,
Yeah.
and like all the colleges are kind of like on a line,
Hmm.
and then Georgia Tech's like up
At
there.
the top.
It's like some way outlier, and
Sure.
because it's like it's the tuition there, especially in state, is very low. Right, it's a regular in-state tuition, and then the degrees you get, especially if you're studying engineering, out of this world, and you're studying really valuable stuff, and the return you get on that kind of investment is one thing. And so I tell people like the college premium for studying engineering at Georgia Tech is massive. The college premium for studying, I don't know, like humanities at Boise State ain't it, right?
That's really interesting because this is purely anecdotal, but I think about the few people who I know went to Georgia Tech, and a lot of them actually were very informed about what and
Yeah,
why,
right.
which is when, and so I wonder if that has a lot to do with it too. It might just be like who goes as well. It's just a little bit
Well,
more
it's a state
because I
school.
think about the families. No, I know it's
That's
a
it.
state school, but I'm
No,
saying
no, no, but that's why, because it doesn't have the same kind of
like cost. Yeah, sure.
prestige. It's about the status game.
Right, because it was the people who went. No, I'm thinking back, like the people who went. Literally, it was like, "Oh, you didn't get into UGA," which is hilarious. But
Really?
it was UGA.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
Georgia Tech's
UGA.
way better than UGA. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, but go dogs, right? Like
I know,
that's
right?
not.
Well, I mean, academically,
That's not.
I mean,
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that's not why. God bless the SEC.
Don't come after
That's
me.
not why. That's not why people are sending their kids to college. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with their careers. It has everything to do with going to the stadium. It has everything to do with
You're
it.
killing
That
me.
is the funniest thing in the world.
See, that's a whole different side of America,
No.
which is hilarious.
No, the sports, dude. If you were to divorce, the sports have propped up the academic industrial
that
complex
blows
for
my
such a long
mind.
time.
Like, no, because there are people. One of my friends from high school went to Clemson, right?
I've had a ton of kids come through our launch program from Clemson because
Yeah.
I don't know what in the frick they're doing over there, but they're not doing it well.
He went $200,000 into
Yeah,
debt at
I know.
Clemson.
I know.
Didn't graduate in the end.
Yeah.
Had to come back after going $200,000 into debt. And the
Well, half the
only
kids that go aren't going to graduate. So
right,
yeah.
and the only reason he went to Clemson was because the freaking football team.
Yes. Not even to play. They go to watch. Did he go to play football or
No,
what?
he went to watch.
Yeah.
He went to watch.
No, that's what I'm trying to tell
I'm
you.
just like-
If college sports did not exist, then the colleges would not have been able to run
Oh
away
my
with this so
God.
long. But
It's
the college
so
sports,
dumb.
it
It's
propped it
so
up.
dumb.
Well, it's just, to me, it's the funniest thing because I'm like, it should just be, the sport should just be a separate thing. Like, I don't think, why do the colleges get to have them? And there's all these weird legal I don't know. I just have, like, that's a whole other thing.
The NIL deals made that a lot better recently, thank God. Where
Yes,
at least
I
like some
love
of
the
the
fact that they
athletes.
freed them up to do that because I was like, I could not. They were like, anyway. And then also so many people sending their kids to college thinking, thinking they're going to get the push for athletic scholarships. I'm like, you realize that less than 1% of kids are going to get full ride athletic scholarships. It's like
No,
none.
it's not just less than 1%.
It's like
it's less than 1 in a
it's a
million.
fraction of it. Yeah, it's like the fraction of a fraction of a fraction. And a ton of student athletes suffer a bunch from depression and anxiety, and they leave or they get hurt.
Yep.
And it's like the whole thing is just it's a whole racket.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
But that goodwill from the sports, and because Americans love sports, has propped up some of these colleges. Because like when I
does.
criticize Texas A&M, like I get so much flack.
they're gonna come after you
You
for
can't
that.
talk about the Aggies, and I'm like freaking.
Can't talk about the
And the
Aggies.
funniest part was
Yeah.
the funniest part, and I just talked about this on another podcast yesterday. But was
Right.
I talked about the median. This is where knowledge rates. So knowledge rates is the college publishes their employment results, like their ROI results, but they can only publish, and this is like not malicious necessarily, but they only publish the employment information and salary information of people who they know are employed. Right. So if
they don't respond to your survey.
well, not only that, but you know who they don't count?
Who?
Women who don't work, which is a ton of college graduates, because
What do
if
you
they're a
mean?
stay-at-home mom, they're not technically employed, so they don't count them. If they were to count the stay-at-home moms that don't earn any income into their knowledge rates, they would look way worse.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, you don't have to count people that aren't making money. You only count people who report their salary information. So
because they count unemployed as people who are seeking labor in the first place.
or that are actually employed. So what I took heat for was I said that Texas A&M, and again remember Texas A&M graduates a ton of petroleum engineers.
Right.
Petroleum engineers is the highest earning major.
Yeah, which is
It
great.
is. Like they earn
far.
a lot. Now, how many petroleum engineers do you think Texas A&M graduates a year?
A couple hundred.
Okay, that's nice. Try 50. For 50, it's like 50 to 80 a year, depending on. Okay. All right. How many psychology
Wow.
majors do you think that Texas A&M graduates?
I mean, a few thousand at least.
There's a four or 500. It's just not that big of a school, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, not that many. It was a lot of K through 12. You get teachers too.
All
But
right. Well,
anyway,
don't trust my off the cuff stats guesses.
well, it's not that big of a school. It's just not. It's not a big school. But the reason, so I took so much flack for this because I was like, hey, Texas A&M says that their grads make $85K a year. I was like, that's not at all inaccurate on average. This is very important.
Yeah, because they average the petroleum engineers with psychology majors who are making nothing. And
Correct. And so the thing I took heat for was literally, and people were like, I can't believe you're attacking them. Literally, this is a direct quote of what I said, Andreas. I said, Texas A&M reports that their grads make $85K a year. I was like, actually, 10 years out of college, their graduates make $59K a year, median, after 10 years. I was like, that is not the same. That is all I said. The amount of flack and hate, and people are like, you don't understand the difference between average and median. I'm like, no. You don't understand the difference between average and median for salary information. And the fact that you're in this comment section as an Aggie who graduated and you're an engineer and you're showing me that you don't even understand the difference between these two things is really concerning. And it really just stonewalls my point.
Yep.
And it was like, but just talking about that, you can't do that. Right, you can't criticize the church. Can't criticize them.
No, you can't.
But I was like, but this is the problem.
Well, different
it's
kind
like
of church, but
different. But you can't criticize the colleges.
Yeah.
But it was that. Like I got so much flack for that. I'm like, all I'm doing is just talking about the actual outcomes.
Right.
And this is why it matters so much because a lot of the goodwill towards in the comment section of this video, I was like, go Aggies. Like, I get that you love the football team, dude. It's putting people in debt that they don't need to be in, and that's my only point.
Well, I get the same
But if it
problem.
wasn't the football team, nobody would defend them like that.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
because of the sports,
And all these colleges will use these ancillary marketing techniques to make people go after them. And I think it gets worse the higher up you go in some ways, because I had similar critiques. Yeah. Did you know that Harvard added a remedial math class the last 2-3 years?
I did, and that's because their kids can't do fractions. I was saying something to Scott Galloway. He does not know I exist. He's a very successful man, very smart man. He is my arch nemesis. I do not like every word that comes out of his mouth. He is, in my view, one of the biggest hypocrites, because as soon as he realized the tide of public opinion was turning about colleges, he jumped on the circuit and he started criticizing, just sniping from his ivory tower as much as he could, because he's smart. He's a marketer. He's brilliant. He's not brilliant because he went to UCLA or Berkeley. He's brilliant because he was raised by very hardworking parents. He's a great example of what I talk about when I'm like, colleges are just filtering. Yeah. It's like betting on Steph Curry. Like, of course, Steph Curry's good. Like, he was good before he was in the NBA, right? Like, and they're like, oh, hey, he's good. Let's just say that he's going to be really
it's also why a lot of people go through the college admissions process. And I say this a lot, like the value. And this, most of the reason why my students will try to get into an Ivy League school is to get in. It's not to graduate. It's to get in.
Oh, I know.
They get in and drop out.
Yes. I had a family from the Bay, and they were like, oh, yeah, he's going to get in. And they were talking to me because they were planning what he's going to do after he gets out of Stanford. They're like, yeah, he's going to get into Stanford. And then after a year, we're going to have him like find. So they were coming to me because they're like, how can you help him find employment?
Exactly. Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like, well, here's what we can do based on what he needs and blah, blah, blah. But it was and that's what people are not understanding. Like, wealthy people send their kids to college. So I was like, no, wealthy people are planning how they're going to get employment. And that is not the same thing. And that's why so many people are unsuspecting, just going in and saying, hey, like, oh, my kid's just going to get into this college and it's going to get them this great job. I'm like, no. That's not where high income families take their hand off the wheel. Like, not at all. 100%. And so people are crediting, and I didn't grow up in that. So I didn't know that. I thought the same thing. Until I started working with these families. I was like, oh, no. It's all of this strategy that goes into getting them into their first role. 100%. Because families are trying to shorten the distance between graduating high school and getting into their first good job, because that is the thing that's going to make the difference with their career and their earnings and their learnings, their education. Yep.
Right. And they'll learn more on the job. And I think, too, the other game they're playing is the venture capital game.
Yes, because it's all tech. It was tech. Yeah.
No. I mean, like, you can raise as a startup founder dramatically. Like, have you seen Roy Lee?
No, I love Roy Lee. Yeah. I love to watch him.
He's so funny. And he has a lot of interesting points. But he, in no small part, was able to raise for Cluely because he dropped out of Columbia.
Yes. Well, brilliant marketing on his part too. Every piece of marketing I've encountered from that kid is unbelievable.
He's a marketing genius.
Yeah. Have you seen Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you realize that his whole Ling Long thing is okay? I was like, oh, you know what? I was cracking up because I realized how
Oh
old
my
I was
God.
because Ryan and I we
Right.
loved Silicon Valley. Like, that
Right.
show's all time. Okay, and we were watching this and we're like, this is what is it? What's the name of the Lee? What is it? Oh shoot, what's the actor's name?
Oh, I don't remember, but I know what you're talking
Jing
about.
Lee or
Yeah.
John Lee, whatever, the Chinese
Yeah.
engineer, the 10X guy.
100%.
And I was like, we were cracking up because we realized he's just using that because nobody his age knows. Has seen that show, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing." But yeah,
He's so
hilarious.
funny. But he's able to raise from
Yeah, because it's like
I think it was from A16Z he got the money
yes,
from, and he was able to do that specifically because he dropped out of Columbia first.
sure.
Mark Zuckerberg because he dropped out of Harvard. Bill
Sam
Gates
Altman.
because he dropped out of Harvard. Sam Altman dropped out of
Yeah, Sam Altman's degree free.
Is he?
Yeah,
That's funny. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
totally.
MIT, right? I think he dropped out of, right? Yeah. So all these guys, they end up dropping out because they weren't there to learn from the college in the first place. They're there to pass the admissions process.
Correct.
And the admissions process for a few years now wasn't even actually selecting for anybody smart to begin with, right? Which is it's the crazy part for me to like admit, and not just admit, but I called them out on this whole time. I got so many death threats specifically. Yeah.
Oh, your
like, literally.
crazies are the same as our crazies.
Oh, it's really bad. I got death threats for telling people that, hey, Ivy League colleges need to make people take the SAT. You can't accept people into top colleges and claim that it's merit based if they're not taking an exam, a standardized test that verifies their ability.
Yes.
And if you let people in without these kinds of tests, you're going to select for something else, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but sure as heck's not intelligence, right? And then, lo and behold, fast forward literally 1 year, and for the first time in 400 years, okay, Harvard has a remedial math class.
Yeah.
And so do all the other Ivies now. They
Yeah.
all have remedial math classes. And when we say remedial math, there's a lot of lies and propaganda that was actually pushed by both the Harvard Crimson, liars, and the New York Times, liars. And I'm calling them both liars because they are liars about this. They lied about what is the curriculum in that course. It's pre-algebra. It's pre-algebra.
Yikes.
And they lied and they said that it was calculus. You know that. They lied and they said that these were learning pre-calculus. Pre-calculus, in case you're wondering, includes all the way from fractions all the way up to
Well,
derivatives.
they're learning fractions.
They're
Like
learning
they, they don't know basic fractions.
They don't know
This
basic
is what I
fractions.
was saying. Like, this is the reason I brought up Scott Galloway, because there was this clip of him at this like Odoo panel where he was talking and he was trying to shame people for not sending their kids to college because
Of course he
this
is.
man desperately needs public money. Like, he wants
Yeah.
public money like nobody's business, and he's realizing that
Yeah.
as public opinion is changing, they're losing public money, and the only way that he keeps his church funded is if he gets public money. And
Yeah.
so his whole argument, there's this TED talk he gave where he's like, America is destroying young people's futures, and then he proceeds to give an entire TED talk, and every single factor he talks about, aside from interest rates, is a direct result of colleges. Like, it's a direct result of the damage colleges has done to young people. When he cites like the mental health issues, most of them are college students that he talks about. Like, but he doesn't say college students; he just says young adults. Like, interesting how you leave out like
The
where
fact that
these
they're
are
all
most
going to
present.
college and getting mental health issues.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing that was crazy was like he then shamed people. She's like, yeah, and little Susie got a 22 on the ACT. He got an 1130 on the SAT in 1982, which is the equivalent of an ACT 23.
Yeah. Well, it shows.
Well, what I'm saying is, no, I'm saying that he had grit. Like, they were already selecting back then. What I'm saying is, there's a back end. They are selecting for things that have nothing to do. They just screened him. They're like, he's got grit. His dad was a salesman. His mom was really hardworking, legal. They were both bright. His parents, bright, hardworking, and immigrants. And they were like, you're gonna be okay. You're going to do good. And so they just picked him and they let him in because they knew he was going to figure it out. It doesn't matter what his ACT
I'm actually
score.
going to push back with you on
Okay.
that.
Well, why do you think they let him in then?
I think the standard just wasn't that high. I think that you're conflating, and this is what a lot of people unfortunately fell for that with Scott Galloway because he's just actually not smart. I think that's actually the answer here.
Well, I mean, he's been very successful, so he must have some intelligence because he's been
not at all. He's an academic.
Well, I mean, there's obviously that, and I agree with you. But I mean, as far as marketing, I mean, he runs a pretty big marketing team. He gets a lot.
Let me clarify. So there's a lot of people who can get a lot of attention. Okay, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to clavicular for my medical advice or for anything like that.
Sure.
Even though he is very successful and like what I'm trying to
He's
say.
built a good, successful brand personally. His personal
Right.
brand, but I mean, I know a couple of his businesses went bankrupt, and he didn't do that. And actually, when I read into it a little bit, because I've read a lot of his writing, the main reason is because when he speaks, I'm
Right.
just like, this guy is just,
Yeah.
and also he does teach for NYU Stern, which is 48 out of 50 for ROI for MBA programs. Like, it's not good over there.
Right.
Like, and so this whole him trying to paint it as this goal and
Well, there's two things here. I want to just like tease them out because like the first thing is that academia, where he spent most of his life, is one of a handful of fields in the world where you can fail upwards infinitely. The other one's politics.
as long as you keep buying paper. With politics, you just got to lie. With academia, you just
not
gotta
just
keep buying
paper. It's very relationship based. And so if you are, as he is,
Yeah, it's incestuous, sure.
Yeah,
Just like politics.
yeah. If you're a middle-aged man who went into academia at a time when colleges were growing very rapidly and they had to fill positions, you would get filled with your positions, and then what they do is when they submit their papers for peer review, which by the way, he's not in the hard science field. He wasn't even in economics.
Yeah,
He was in business.
which is like made up.
Which is totally made up.
Yeah.
Which means that he and all the other business professors, when they publish a paper, supposedly, where they're doing research, it's not real research because there's no hard nature reality to validate this against.
Right. It's not physics. It's
fake.
nothing. Yeah, sure.
It's fake, and it's validated by all the other people who will validate each other's fake research. That's how this works. Psychology is the same thing, by the way.
Oh,
okay?
I mean, I don't want to talk about psychology, of course. Like,
it's mostly a fake field.
Yeah, totally.
And they will validate each other's fake research. All the academics, they go in circles, and the peer review boards, they actually have cabals of these people who will then, and if you're in their in group, if you're one of them, they sign off, and you can keep rising infinitely. Now, there are other areas. Now, if Scott Galloway was not an academic, if he's actually good at business, again, why is he not a CEO? And
well, he is a CEO of his personal brand, so the brand that he's built. So in a way, and this is why I do want to be objective. Like, I do want to be objective. Like, he's a very talented speaker. He's a very talented speaker because he grew up as a child watching his dad speak. It has nothing to do with college. That taught him that. But so he does have, like, he is successful, and he's built a successful personal brand, and then he does make good income from that, from his brand and from his agency that runs his brand. But yeah, as of like you're right, the businesses that he built before, as I've read about him a little bit, I'm like, these didn't go that well.
And also how much of that's manufactured. This is the other part.
That's interesting because I felt like I was like one of his. I feel like I'm one of his harshest critics, but like this is a very interesting take that you have.
It's not even like I don't mean to pick too much on him personally.
No.
But like when you look at legacy media personalities,
Sure.
a very large percentage of those people are simply puppets of producers and of teams behind them that are there to say the right things and have the right opinions. I'll give a great example of this. Jim Cramer.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Jim Cramer. Yeah.
Jim Cramer is by, you could say of Jim Cramer, he's a very successful media personality. He's had a headlining show for 30 years now, right? Okay. And, also Jim Cramer's investment predictions are so hilariously bad that you can have an inverse Kramer index that consistently outperforms the S&P.
Yeah.
Okay? It's like,
that's so true.
But just doing the opposite of everything he says. Okay. Right. I bet you if I found an inverse Galloway index, it would do reasonably well.
Oh man.
Okay. And this is why I'm saying media success is not like other kinds of success. You can't say that about Elon Musk because
there's physical
because at the end of the day, his rocket goes up or it goes down.
Yeah, he's built things.
Built things, real
things, not bytes.
Real things. Okay, sure. So likewise, when I'm building a company, my greatest evidence of my own success is my physics research and the fact that I have a successful AI company where we built real software that actually has to work. Okay, and if it doesn't work, we're up S Creek. Okay, it's a real problem.
And so for us, it's like no, the kid has a job, and now they're there, and now they're actually working and they're earning money.
There's
in the
accountability.
Real world. Sure, right. There has a real physical result in the real world, not just views.
What is Scott Galloway's physical result in the real world?
There isn't one. Insightful, very simple.
Hi, Scott. Sorry. I didn't mean to pick on you that bad. Like, I kind of did, but like,
I did.
whatever.
Anyway. Yeah, like I said, he's like, it's okay. I'm a fly to him, right? But yeah, like
it's okay.
I've decided he's my arch nemesis. He'll never know who I am, but it doesn't matter. Like I've just decided.
This, you never know. Okay. But all this is to say that, like, I think that, and this is, I think, a good point to start coming to both a little bit of a conclusion. I want to hear a little more about what you guys are doing specifically to help people. But I think there is a fundamental distinction. And I think if we're making predictions, I think this is going to be an emergent property in our economy, that we're moving towards proof of skill, or the way that you'd have like proof of work for Bitcoin, for example.
I agree 100%.
Right? And there will be some way for you to show how you're good at something, and there'll be more than one path to get good at something, right? And then let's take software engineering as that one's I think has already gone there entirely, and it's a good, I think, canary in the coal mine for the rest of industry, because if you're a good software engineer, you can prove it with a portfolio and with engineering interviews.
I have a theory about how this is going to happen.
Tell me.
And the reason is because I've been a part of a few different things. It's interesting. We've actually turned down a significant amount of funding from people who've been trying to do, like, either they just want to invest in degree free, or they're working on credentialing, right? Everyone's trying to chase the how of credentialing. I actually think, and most things in our country, if you look at this, like if you read history at all, which you are very bright and you're very educated, so I'm sure that you have, but most things go back to the future. So if you look at our country right now, the homeschooling movement or microschooling movement, it's literally back to the one-room schoolhouse. The removal of degree requirements is back to the future.
Right.
But the other thing, the way that people are originally, let's think about the greats. Let's just use creatives for an example. How did Michelangelo, Raphael, Da Vinci, how did they learn to be great?
Apprenticeships.
What was it that made other people recognize that they were going to be great?
I mean,
who their masters were.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that the future is shrinking the distance, as I said, between graduating high school and who you're working with. And that's interesting because the wealthy people have already figured this out. And that's why they get this little stamp from acceptance to the college, and their kids leave in a year because they don't even need to be there. It's all about what company they work for.
Yes.
It's all about where or who they're working with.
Yes, exactly.
And that is really, it's nothing new. There's nothing, right? King Solomon, there is nothing new under the sun. Everything's going to go back to the way it was. And I even think to the point where, this is my pet theory. This has nothing to do with anything, but how with AI and everything moving so quickly and you not knowing what's real, I think that the future is going to be back to newspapers. I think we're going to go back to printed things because you can't verify anything and all these bits and bytes, and things change. AI is fake, but you can hold a paper in your hand and say, no, yesterday you guys said this. And I think that there's going to be like a fax machine in people's house where it's going to print out the daily paper. I'm not kidding. I think it's going to go back to that.
You could get there with encryption, actually.
Well, maybe, but I think the vast majority of people are just, you want to have a paper thing. I think the newspapers are going to have a resurgence. That's my pet theory.
Can I tell you, this is one of my own little conspiracy theories. Behind that door there, I have a giant bookshelf where I keep physical copies of important philosophical texts.
I have the same thing.
Because I'm afraid the government's going to start editing the words at some point.
I have the same thing. Yeah. I have an extensive library. People come in our house and they're like
I'm a little crackpot, okay? Forgive me. Okay? But this is my little pet peeve. I also have 5 different versions of the Bible for the same reason.
Yeah, you should always have, there's nothing wrong with having as many books as humanly possible. This is something that's so funny to me. Like, it's always, again, when people say like, oh, you're anti-intellectual, they don't know, like, I'm classically educated. Like, I've read, I grew up reading.
I don't think that's why they're calling they are calling you anti-intellectual. No. It's because they consider themselves intellectual and you're anti-them.
Right. It's it's anti-purchase.
They're saying you're anti-me.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. It's different. Okay.
And I know people are going to listen to this and go, oh, she's really obsessed with that. But it's just because it's inaccurate. The inaccuracy really bothers me. Like, let's just be consistent. If it was consistently wrong, that's fine. But let's just at least be consistent if we're going to define things. That's what just gets to me.
Anti-intellectual, maybe you'd say it,
it's just, but it's the fact that it's the incorrect definition that just bothers me.
For what it's worth, I'm anti-academic, and I'll say that. I am too. I'll say that proudly, as in but I'm anti-academic from someone who spent most of his life in academia. From my dad had a PhD, my mom was a teacher, and so I grew up steeped in this stuff. My dad used to read me Homer to fall asleep in ancient Greek.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, not ancient Greek. We were not reading ancient Greek
Well,
in my
I'm
house.
Greek, so like
Oh, that makes sense.
It wasn't as much of a stretch for me.
I said,
Okay,
sure, yeah.
I swear that's not as much of a flex as like people think it is.
It still kind of is, though.
A little bit. Like in Greece, they actually do still make them learn ancient Greek and stuff. It's really a thing. And so,
cool.
like, long story short, like, I was steeped in this stuff, but like I critique them more from like the Nassim Taleb perspective of like I see a lot of like intellectuals yet idiots, like where like they'll have like all these degrees, they'll have all this fancy stuff. You'll be like a Scott Galloway, right? And then like you won't do like a basic logical syllogism to see like where exactly like you're getting this information from, and like. Okay, well, it'd be nice if you actually verified some of that.
Yeah. Or you were just able to take an idea out without being threatened by it and hold it up to the light and examine it and see if there's holes in it.
Yeah.
It's just people who are intellectuals, in my mind. I'm not saying that I am one, but like you should, because there's things that I'm sure I don't like my worldview being threatened. Nobody does. But if you hold an idea up to the light, like you should be able to look for the holes without it disintegrating everything that you think about yourself. Like if you're not able to do that, that's not the hallmark of an educated individual.
And this goes back to I think something else, and we should maybe have a couple more spicy points on this. This is why the vast majority of people I think are not fit for education at all.
Education or college?
Well, and I think there's a difference between education and job training.
Yes.
And I think we're all conflating everything. And for example, there's a lot of people who actually are following the perspective that you're describing where they want to get a job. A lot of the rich people, and I work with a very large number of ultra high net worth clients. Most of my clients, all of my clients pretty much are ultra high net worth.
Sure.
And so I will tell you for a fact, the majority of them are not concerned whatsoever with the employment prospects of their children.
Interesting.
They are not trying to do that at all. They're actually asking themselves the Alexander the Great question. They're asking themselves, because Alexander the Great was educated one-on-one with Aristotle as his tutor, right? And the goal of Aristotle was to make him a philosopher king. It was not to make him
a conqueror.
He was fine with him being a conqueror. He just didn't. It wasn't for him to go find a job. Okay, and that is the level at which a lot of people are operating at. And when I say that, what I mean is like they don't view college as a way to get a job at all. They don't care. The job was never the goal for them to begin with. The goal was a character development. Which is also not happening at these colleges.
Well, I think that's why now we're seeing that. It's because it's no longer doing that either.
Right.
I just saw this Miami-based private family office, and we've worked with a couple family offices too, where the parents are starting to wonder if they're not being prepped at all, and they're not going to be able to maintain this wealth. And that's where that's why now these cracks are showing, is because the colleges are trying to backfill their enrollment decline with international students, and they're trying to backfill it with lower income students, and then government money, right? Which is now you see free college everywhere, free for like, and again, if something has value, the government doesn't have to give it away for free.
And here's the best part: they're going out of business anyway.
Right.
Have you seen how many private colleges are closing today?
Yes, I'm thrilled because they shouldn't exist. And it's so funny because I just saw this Harvard economics professor, and it's literally the funniest thing.
Yeah, he was in the news. Yeah, I posted it on my story.
Yes, I saw it too. And the funniest part was a bunch of people sent it to me because they said, look, he's been following degree free.
Right? That's awesome.
Ryan and I have been saying this for years.
He's so cool.
And I said, these colleges need to close. Like there's a podcast clip for me like 3 years ago where I said, these colleges need to close, and that's what's going to happen. And sure enough, because I have I'm starting a show in a couple weeks, launching a new show, and I pull this clip from the archives where I'm saying that not only should this happen, but it's going to have to. But I actually have a lot of hope in a lot of ways for the college system if they can make this market correction, because if they want to survive, they got to cut. They have to cut all these programs. They have to cut all these professors. It's like they're running a jobs program. These people need to be employed in the private sector. They need to be running their own businesses. They don't need to be employed by colleges. There's too much admin, like by far. And then there's too many professors, and you can tell that because something like, I think 25% of college professors in our country are on welfare benefits because they don't make enough in order to.
That's terrifying.
Oh, it's staggering. And then the amount of them that earn less than $50,000 a year is also very high.
See, that terrifies me because that's how you get a revolution.
Well, yeah, because again, they're running a jobs program. Like these people shouldn't be. It's all fake. It's all artificial.
Right. No, but I mean on a deeper level, because like the most dangerous people alive always are the highly educated people employed below their perceived
This
status.
is why I say highly papered, because, and this is why it's so important
Yeah,
to
highly
divorce these things,
papered people. Yeah.
because there's a very big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, and this is why, like, I talk about this, and because this is why the language matters a lot.
Right. Right.
And so that's why I don't call
That's fair.
people educated anymore just because they have college degrees. You are obviously educated, but the way I can tell is because I can see that you're educated by your actions, the way you speak, the way that you think. And that's how we should evaluate people. It's,
Right.
are your actions that of an educated individual? If yes, then educated. Now, that is different. Papered people can be educated, degree-free people can be educated, but and that's why I think as a society too, I agree with you. And that's why there's so much discord, is because what is
Right.
educated? And if your society can't define that, or all of a sudden people start to doubt what people say is educated, now you can trust anybody.
100%.
And so it's causing all of this class warfare that doesn't need to exist.
Yeah.
And all of it could be solved by abolishing the Higher Education Act and stopping the flow of money.
And it makes sense, right? Because, like, I'm going to be honest with you, and I want to say this. I don't get political in public, but I want to just,
because it doesn't matter really.
The day that someone's politics will help them get into an Ivy League school, I'll get political.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
So far, it hasn't.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, but this is an important point, just as a matter of like basic political theory and obvious incentives, right? Because if I'm 22 and I'm graduating from one of these colleges with, $100,000 in debt, and all I hear all day, and by the way, credit to Dave Ramsey, great advice on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really think he's grossly underestimating is how dangerous it is to load up all of our kids with all this debt and say, deal with it now, pay it off.
I agree.
Right? Because what's going to happen to all these kids, and what is obviously happening
right
is it's happening right now. They are using their only power they have left to vote for people
Who are
going to steal that money and take care of the debt and pay it off for them.
Yes.
And when I say steal, because they're going to take it by force from other people who do have money, who made better choices
Yes.
in some ways. And because that's the only way that they have a chance at living a life they feel they deserve.
Yes.
And, when you create a class of people like that who are very literate, okay, even if they're not, I wouldn't call them educated, but I would certainly call them, they're very papered, and they're very entitled, and they believe that they deserve way more than they're getting. And can I tell you something? In a sense, they're right.
I agree. I don't disagree with you, because I think that they were victims of a and I'm
Right.
sorry, but you can't sell children things for 12 years and tell them that's the only way to success, and to be upset with them when they go do the thing that you said, and then now it doesn't work out.
Right.
I agree. They got robbed.
And they got robbed, and they were robbed by the boomers,
Yeah.
telling them to go to college.
I agree with you.
And so, to be
agree with you.
candid with you, I have a serious question here. I'm just going to go a tiny bit political. Well, why are we not taxing the endowments to pay for the debt?
I am the only person who have said this. Other than you.
Now we're number two.
So I would say you're the only other person I've ever heard say this, because for the longest time, and let's get into this a little bit, because you know what? These kids are all convinced, the great irony being that the system that has allowed this is fundamentally not capitalist.
Yeah.
That is the thing. But the irony of, again, if you look at the comments on my content where I talk about this and I say, hey, these people are robbing you. And I said, you know the way to fix this? I was like, start taxing these endowments. I don't want to hear eat the rich from you people. Eat the endowments. I was like, $848 billion, these endowments. They grow tax free. People do
Right.
not know that's how it works. And it's so crazy to me that we've got this jobs program propping up people whose only way to succeed in their jobs is buying more paper. It's a Ponzi scheme. And then they turn around and they tell these kids that you need to go rob money from businesses and from people who did not buy paper in order to pay off loans that you have, because you are in a system that is fundamentally not capitalist. The system that granted you those loans is not capitalist. It's socialist. It's subsidized by the government. That's not a capitalist system. And so the fundamental misunderstanding, and this is showing how uneducated people are that come out of the college system, to think that the reason your student loans are so high and the reason you can't get a job is because of capitalism, when in fact it's because of socialism, is the wildest thing in my. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen.
But it's also like a natural consequence, because they were not taught actual economic theory in
Right.
college.
They were taught wild economic dogma, which is something I say all the time. I was like,
Right.
you're taught by the cult of academia. They're telling you things are true. They're not true. And I was like, and then you go out into the world believing those things are not true, and you're unemployable because you believe this.
Well, and that's the thing. I think
And also,
people
most college
misunderstand.
graduates are higher income. They're
Yeah.
not poor. These are not poor kids coming
Right.
out. And that's why I'm so against, like, people always say, well, then we should just pay off the loans. I'm like, I don't agree with that, actually, because most of the loans are held by higher income students. And I was like, so you're not going to alleviate this burden on poor students. It's also not fair to just pay off the loans of poor students and then leave the middle class kids with it.
Yep.
And because there's no fair solution, I think the solution is you figure out I think you tax the endowments. Where's the money? The colleges have it. Take it all from them.
Yeah.
Because I'm sick of hearing that they need it for research. The frick they do. They need to pay off the crisis that they have created, and they are completely unaccountable for.
Well, and this blows my mind. They're paying the administrators. Like, there is not such a thing as a college administrator with a salary less than $100,000 a
No,
year.
I know that. And it's also,
Which is
why are there so many admins? And the
how?
reason, it's a jobs program,
Yeah.
because you have to employ these people, or the amount of people, if you stopped employing people, again, and I actually saw the former Secretary of Education talking about how the high schools, like college, K through 12 is actually just a jobs program, which makes sense if you think how many people are employed in K through 12 education. But if you look at the colleges are a jobs program too, because
It's very dangerous.
they employ their own grads.
Well, here's the part. If we fired all of them overnight too, if you had, I'm telling you, I think people misunderstand the fact that this actually has become an existential threat to the survival of the country.
I agree.
Right? Where if you look at every revolution in history, if you go to the French Revolution, you go even to the American Revolution, you go to every revolution all the way back, it's always upper middle class people who got a little bit, too much time in academia, and then were somehow dispossessed.
Yeah.
And we have exactly that. So, okay, what are these people going to do? And and don't tell me
Do what they're doing. They're going to riot. They're going to protest. I mean, like a great example of this, I always, Karl Marx. Karl Marx looks exactly like a middle class kid with two professional working parents that then decided that he had too much time on his hands. He couldn't get a job, and then now he's starting a revolution.
And this is the crazy part too with the jobs, because like the thing that people hire you fundamentally for, if you do get a job, it's your ability to understand reality, predict it, and then execute on it. Right.
Well
that's
said.
what every job at its basis is. Well, they'll have different, dressing on the outside, but there's something about reality you understand how to solve, and you can solve real problems, and that is useful to people. And if you are spending years being taught not reality, and you go into the workforce and you have to deal with actual reality, because people will vote against you and not pay you if you don't, then you're in a mess. I want to try to land this plane a little bit, though.
Well, I think that there's a lot of hope. So that's where I usually want to land it. Is one, the biggest determinant of whether or not kids go to college and whether or not they go to the correct college, if they are going to go for some clear reason, is parents. So all this sounds, wow, this big, it's out of control. All this crazy stuff's happening. No, parents, you have the control to fix this.
Yeah.
You are the determining factor of whether or not your kids go to college, and you can control what happens. Kids do not, and the main reason is, I'll go back to this mom I was talking to. Her daughter cannot take out or cannot even apply for these colleges unless she signs the FAFSA.
Right.
She cannot. If you are concerned that your children are going into this uninformed, or that they are going and it is not going to work out, do not sign the FAFSA. That is the hardest thing in the world. And that's why I told her, I said, either way, you're not going to feel good about this. You put her into debt, you're going to feel bad. You pay out money for something that does not help her get what she wants, you're going to feel bad. You don't fill out the FAFSA, you're going to feel bad. It's just, which flavor of bad do you want to feel? And that is something only individual families can answer for themselves. But I think overall, while we're in kind of a painful middle ground, there's a lot to show that the job creation is going to go up. I think this actually is going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's just painful right now, but the job creation is going to go up. Market correction is going to come from a lot of the colleges closing. It's just because the money is drying up for them, which is really good. I think that the more we talk about this, the more likely we are to get the Higher Education Act abolished, which it must be in order for this to get fixed.
And they need to revise that executive order from Bush, making because if we move back to at least dischargeable loans, that would solve most of this problem overnight.
It would help. I think if you just, because it's an addendum to the Higher Education Act, so if we
Right.
just get rid of the whole thing, it's all gone.
Well, if you give her the whole thing, that'd be great. I'm just saying acts of Congress are hard to
Yeah.
come by.
Yeah,
You know?
sure. But I don't know. We're getting to that point,
Yeah.
trillions of dollars, and then, but even if that doesn't happen, if parents just go into this, making sure their kids are making much more informed choices that
Yeah.
align with the lives that they want, naturally what you're going to get is people realizing that they don't have to go to college at all. And then if they do, they're fully informed about why and the execution of it going forward into their life. You're going to have people that are much less dissatisfied with their lives, much happier. They have a lot more capital. They can take a lot more risk. They can get married. Like the growth will happen.
And most importantly of all that, and this is something really, really key that I tell people, if you're going to go to college, even if you do have a good reason, the amount of debt you would go into matters.
Yes.
It really matters. Because not every college and not every degree is worth it for the particular amount of debt you would take out. And you have to just sit yourself down and do some honest math. And if you're really not sure how much you're going to make after college, that is a great indication that the amount of debt you should take should be less.
I could not. That was a really elegant way to say that. Yes, I could not agree more.
That's it. Well, when you're uncertain about something in life, you take less risk.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
You're supposed to hedge yourself. We buy an insurance policy on a home. Why? Do we think it's likely that your house is going to burn down? I hope not. Okay. You don't think it's likely that you're going to be getting into car accidents nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think it's likely that you're going to end up in the hospital. Knock on wood. I hope all of us are healthy and happy.
Yeah.
But we protect ourselves from the downside risk, and that is 100% true. And I just want to give a message here to a lot of the people watching this. Yesterday was National College Decision Day. Actually, so a lot of people committed to the colleges they were going to go to, and a lot of people maybe made choices that were hard choices. And I've actually, on many occasions, actually convinced people to avoid high debt situations in college. And it's often an ego hit for these kids, right? And I want to assure you guys about something. I'm going to treat this in the negative. There is no more effed up person in this world than the 30-year-old with $200,000 in student loans who can't go on a vacation, let alone start a family, or pay for a wedding, or or any of the things that actually make life worth having. Because that's what people actually, really should be aiming at. I mean, tell me something, and this is sort of an interesting thing, because I think you were blessed in this regard. How old were you when you had your first kid?
28.
Wow.
Yeah, 28.
And that's way younger than a lot of people are even starting to try.
That is something that it's so funny. I was just talking to a dad the other day, and he was talking to me about how his kids are in their 30s and not having children. And a lot of the reason that they're not having children is due to the amount of student debt. Something I say to parents a lot is, if you want grandchildren, I was like, it would very much behoove you not to put your children in student debt, because I was like, if you are choosing between those two, if you want your child to be able to buy a house, people only have so many $100,000 bullets. And if you're going to spend it on a college degree at 17 or 18 years old, it is very likely that is going to keep your child from being able to take other risks, which include starting a business, buying a home, or having a family. And so the decision you're making at 17 and 18 years old is generational. Like it is going to have generational impact on your child. And so if they take an ego hit at this age, take heart that it is a much easier hit than they are going to take later. And the amount of misery that happens later as somebody who gets those emails from people in that position who are not able to be employed, who are not able to be home with their kids, who are not able to afford a house. Please think about this now. It's so hard because your kids are not in that position now, but it's so much easier to handle that regret now, to handle that.
And can I tell you something else too? I'm just going to say this just for the record here. I'm in my 30s. I am deeply religious. I'm part of a religious community, which in principle has much higher rates of childbearing than other communities. I'm actually part of the highest fertility religious group in America by far. Okay. Orthodox Christians.
They have lots of kids.
We have a lot of kids. Okay. Very few, almost none of my friends around my same age are even thinking about getting married, let alone having kids. The number of weddings, I talked to my parents about this at one point, and they were going to weddings like every other weekend throughout their 20s and 30s all the time. I've been invited to maybe 2.
Yep.
It's not like I don't have friends. I have lots of friends.
Yeah.
They're just not getting
They're
married.
just not getting married.
They're not getting married, and they're not having kids.
Hmm.
That is not good.
Yeah.
That's not good for anyone.
One of my favorite stories about the launch program is this young man that came through, and he had gone to four-year university and just was not a fan. So then he went to a community college, transferred to a community college, and not a fan there. And then after that, his parents were like, "Well, go to trade school." His dad's an engineer, his mom's a licensed clinical social worker, and then he ended up in the launch program because he's like, none of this is like working for me. There's nothing wrong with this kid. And I came through the launch program, and then we helped him find the right fit, and then helped him find entry-level roles to apply to. He applied, immediately got hired, paid on the job training,
Awesome.
was hired within 3 days. Like, that's what happens when you get this match. Like,
Right.
we're like basically career matchmakers. And so we connected. And then proceeded to tell us that he was going to propose to his girlfriend as soon as he had saved enough. And that is one of the things I'm the proudest of, because that had been one of the things that was his goal, that was success to him, was like, I want to live near my family. I want to make enough to provide for a family. I want to have some kids. Like, that's what he wanted, right?
Basic stuff out of life.
Basic stuff out of life. And I'm saying, like, not everybody has the same definition of success, but that was his. And then the steps.
Can I tell you something? I disagree. I mean, I think we're gonna play games about some 1% minority of people that have whatever difference that makes them not want that. For 99% of humans,
It's that.
99% of human history,
Your family, your friends, your home.
you want family and kids, and you want a place to live, and you want to live a reasonably,
Comfortable life. Stable is the term that a lot of these kids will say. Like, I just really want something stable. That's what they say.
Are we supposed to pretend that that's a fringe position?
No, I don't think so. I just want to make sure that people...
I think we're being told that. I'm being told that all day long.
I don't see that at all. And because we work with kids in all 50 states, probably just like you. And no, the overall, like, despite differences, I find that that's exactly...
It's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
But we can just say it.
Yeah.
It's what everybody wants.
Yeah, you want to have
it's not a mystery.
Yeah, you want to have your house. Like, you want to have somebody who loves you. Like, you want to have a pet. Like, you want to have a job that provides for the life that you want to live.
Unless you're having a serious mental issue.
Right.
That's what you want out of life.
Yeah.
And you'll get more happiness. And I think people don't hear this. You will get more happiness out of having a few kids than you would out of any career.
I think that this is something that is really important too, because there's so much focus on, like, oh, your work has to be your passion. Your work has to be your passion.
No,
like, no, your work, and for all of human history and across the world, it's a uniquely American thing to think that your work has to be your passion. Also, if you stake all of your energy into that, you are going to be grossly let down, because work is work. And while you can like it, and that's great if you do, I think that a lot of young adults trying to get their work as their passion right out of the gate is the wrong thing to pursue. I think you figure out what fits your needs, and then as you get more experience, it's going to get a little clearer to you what problem do you want to solve? What are you passionate about solving? Because that's where I sit right now, right here in my 30s, and you in your 30s, solving the problem that you care about, that you have the experience to solve. If I had tried to do that right out of the gate, I'm going to be in the wrong place.
100%.
And also, you're not going to have a clear understanding of, like, how your life is going to go and the experience you're going to amass, which is why, again, that distance between high school graduation and your first work experience is very important. And then what that work experience is really important too.
Yeah, because we've gone to the point where the work is the part where you get the training.
Yes.
And, I want to do this too. One of the things I've always wanted to do at some point in my life, maybe I'll address this. It's going to be really important for somebody to build an apprentice network.
Oh man, this is something that you and I will probably have to talk about this, because there's
someone's got to do that.
It has to happen. And the irony of being is that in our world, something so simple is so complex.
Right.
And a lot of this is because we've done, so one of the things that I've done that's really interesting is gone through, and I've state by state, I have a state by state breakdown of which jobs legally require college degrees, what the exposure is, like the amount of jobs, the amount of, there's 867 occupations in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but there's really closer to 3,000 unique jobs, and then more every single month. A good example of how inaccurate the BLS is, which is what we use in K through 12 to show people what careers are out there. A very small slice of that is the BLS for a long time didn't recognize data science as an occupation. Until 2018, they didn't recognize it. At that time, Andreas, 100,000 people were data scientists in our country before they recognized it as a career. And they had data scientists working at the Bureau of Labor Statistics before they even not recognized it as a career.
Only in the government.
Right. And think about, this is I think it's a 300 person department, and their entire job is to like track the occupations, but that's how bad they are doing it.
Well,
Which is
BLS does everything bad. I mean,
Right.
have you seen their inflation indices?
No, because why would there's no way it's right. What? Right?
Well,
No, I use McChickens to measure inflation.
It's,
I go
it's
see
a better
it.
metric.
Yeah. I go see, like, I have the McChicken index. Like, that's what I that's what I do. My husband and I joke about it. I'm like, oh well, the McChickens are, those
Can I
things
tell you,
are.
the McChicken index is a great one, I gotta say, because like for a fact McDonald's is doing everything in their God-given power to try to reduce that price of that McChicken. They do not want that McChicken to be expensive.
No, and I use McChickens instead of like a Big Mac or something, because a McChicken was $1, for, and so it's a little bit easier to track. I'm a simple person, like it's $1, and I'm like, oh man, it's $1.29, that's $1.50.
Yeah.
It's not good. That's no good.
No, and
right?
it's definitely not like the 2 or 3%. Whenever they're claiming that they're always changing the basket of the goods.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're off the rails now, but yeah.
we're way off. I think things are getting better. I think people are making individual choice. I think the move back to having like actual apprenticeships is going to fix a lot of this problem.
Yep.
If we get around to letting people do that. And I say that just because in a lot of professions, we're already at that point.
Yes.
Like I've had multiple people go on to other very successful careers specifically because they worked for me.
Yes.
That was it. Their credential was they worked for me for a few years.
Yes.
And the other company called me and I told them, hey, this person's good. You need to hire them right now.
Have you ever watched My First Million?
No.
Oh, so Sean Puri and Sam Parr. Sean Puri is, both of them are, they've had a couple different businesses. Sam Parr started The Hustle, which got acquired by HubSpot, and now they have this podcast.
That's awesome.
But Sean Puri had this kid working for him. I say kid because he was like 18,
right?
And he started like a cryptocurrency newsletter, and then this kid was just the marketing mind behind it. And then Sean Puri sold it, and then this kid was able to have a successful career just because he had worked for Sean Puri. Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, worked for Sean Puri. That was awesome. How he learned to do what he's doing now.
I love
and
that.
So yes, I believe that's exactly what's going to go on. And I think that there's a lot, kind of the back to the future theory is that everything is moving back that direction.
Right.
There's a lot of Gen Z is interested in entrepreneurship because there is more, because there's a bigger value that they can see associated, more freedom, more control, more income.
Well, it's also easier to be an entrepreneur than it ever was.
Right. And also everything has been leaning more towards that. And I think there's going to be eventually deregulation on some things too, which is going to help with cost of compliance for small businesses.
Yeah.
And then that's good because I think there's a lot more control for people. There's a lot more, there's a lot less rules. And when there's a lot less rules, you're going to have a lot more opportunity. So I actually think the future is bright in the next like 5 to 10 years. I don't have this gloomy vision of the future. AI is not going to destroy everything. I think it's going to create a ton of jobs. I think it's already creating a ton of jobs. I look at our team and we have more creatives than we have anything else, and we're going to have a ton more. And that is the future. That's the future. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good stuff.
Let's wrap this up a little bit by talking about what you actually do. So what does Degree Free actually do? How do you help people? If someone, how does someone know if they're the right fit to reach out to you?
Sure. So if your child is 18 to 20 years old and they are not sure what career to pursue, or they want to start working, but they're not sure what career they want to start, what we do is we have the launch program. It's a 4-week program. And this is not like a personality test or quiz. This is not software. This is a person. And it's very labor intensive on our part. We do a ton of research for every individual that comes through the program. We also can only take so many people at a time because it takes a lot of focus to do this. And so what we do is we have career strategists, and their entire job is kind of like career matchmakers. What do you need from your work? And we have this really intensive onboarding. We do that. And then the next thing we do is vocational creativity. So we go out and look, not using the BLS, we use the market down to zip code specificity where they are, figure out what careers fit what they need, and also what they want, help them figure out what's interesting to them that also fits their needs. Then we do the skill stack analysis, like you're saying Scott Adams wrote about. And we say, okay, like legal requirements, like what, licenses, certs, skills, what are employers looking for where you are. Then we help them figure out how they're going to learn it. And if college is a legally required thing, we outline the best way to do that. We've saved, remember we saved a family, their daughter wanted to be a nurse. They were in the Bay, or no, they were in LA. They were outside, right outside of LA, and saved them like 50 grand on nursing school because
That's
she did
awesome.
want to be a nurse. And there's South Dakota runs like a medical or an educational tourism, basically. So they have like a nursing program that's
Nice.
accredited, that's 13 months. Anyway, but basically we just are very strategic about like when do you apply college, if you do at all, and if you don't, which is most jobs, like for us, that's like 90% of jobs. How do we get you in? Like what's the best
Right.
entry level work for you? And then what do you put on your resume? What portfolio do you need to build? And then after that, families have the option, if they want to have their kids go into the career year, which is where we work one-on-one with them for a year, and we help them. So instead of a gap year, it's a career year, and we help them get into their desired field. And so we do that by essentially just reverse recruiting. And so I think we're the only company, to my knowledge, that's doing it that way. But you must go through the launch program to get into the career year, because some kids go through the launch program and they're able to just get into the right role. And but if you're in something niche, like we have a young lady who I think is going to be a farrier, and that's horseshoeing.
That's so cool.
Right. And for the Derby, very cool.
Yeah.
She has a horse, and she's interested in animals and stuff. And we give kids the whole everything that fits their requirements, and then they narrow it down based on interest too. So everything that they choose fits their financial needs, their schedule, all that stuff. But then that was what she chose, and that takes a fair amount of research. Farriers are apprenticed, and then we're calling, we're doing all the like boots on the ground kind of stuff, and then get them into their first paid position. And we do that in less than a year, because there's very few careers that take longer than a year. We get inbound too from people that we had a young man come in, and he ended up wanting to go into cloud architecture, and we had an inbound inquiry for entry-level software dev. So we were able to make that introduction, which was really cool. So we get a lot of inbound from all different kinds of business owners as well, who are just interested in teaching, like, it could be tech, it could be cybersecurity, automation, sales, salmon boat. That was cool.
I love salmon boat.
Salmon boat. That was a cool one.
Hey, you actually play someone for that? Mm-hmm. That's phenomenal.
We had somebody go to the Rolex Institute in Dallas.
Cool.
Yeah, which is horology, so watchmaking.
Yeah.
And then she also, as an aside, she spoke Russian, so that was a really good combination for her.
Are there a lot of Russians there?
No. Actually, she's from Florida, but she lives in she's from Miami.
No. I mean at the Rolex Institute.
But there's a lot of Russians that buy expensive watches. So that was a really good. This is where like using their existing skill set, if they have, I'm like, wow, that's a really
great salesperson.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we do a Venn diagram almost of like what if they have some unusual existing skill like that. We had one young man who's like a champion Rubik's Cube solver, right? And so we just place them depending on what. So we basically have done everything that colleges should do, in my opinion, and as far as like job and career placement. So we do the job career placement side, and we do everything that they should do, which is resumes, interview prep, placement, and then we get them into basically, again, shrinking that window between graduating high school and getting into the correct paid work for the career that fits your needs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Cool. Okay. And how can people find that?
If you want your child to be in the launch program, degreefree.com/launch. And then if your child's a good fit for the career year, then we will invite you in after they go through the launch program.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Hannah, thank you so much for coming out and doing this.
Thank you.
Was a great time.
This is so much fun. Like, we're going to have to do this again.
I think we should. I think we should 100%.